Yes.
Okay, it's 7 o'clock, everyone. Welcome to the May 13th Cross Lake City Council meeting. Let's stand up and say the pledge. Thank you all for coming. We got some interest out there. First off, there's approvals, additions to the agenda, and I've also changed the agenda around a little bit. Can we have a motion to okay that?
So moved. I'll second that.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Second is the consent calendar. Everybody had a look at that. Do we have a motion to approve that?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Heacock, second by Herzig. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Public forum. No action will be taken on any of the issues raised. If appropriate, the issues will be placed on the agenda for a future council meeting. Speaker must state their name and address. Each speaker is given 3 minutes. Anybody interested? It doesn't look like anyone's coming up, so we'll close the public forum. First on the critical issues is a recommendation from the Cross Lake Facility Committee. Kevin, are you? Come on up.
Good evening, Mayor and the Council. Kevin Sedeby. I chaired the Cross Lake Facility Committee. And the recommendation from the committee, there's a couple of them here for tonight. The first one is to enter into a real estate agreement for the property just to the south here. And that would be used in our proposal for to build a new police station administration building on that site. Any questions on that? Most of the council members were on that, a lot of them were on that committee and went through that, so.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to elaborate on the committee just for the people. Tell a little story.
I can, I guess, on the next one, Mayor, if you want to.
Okay, you bet. Continue on.
Second of all, the facility committee, first of all, was made up of Doreen Galloway, Bill Schultz, Marcia Siebert-Vols, Mick Cheetah, myself, Tom Swenson, Dan Hagerson, Mark Wessels, Daryl Schneider, and Mark Linder. As you all know, Mayor Nevin asked to put this committee together to take a look at the facility needs. I think what we came up with for a plan from the committee as a consensus from the entire committee is fiscally responsible, and the plan will address the space needs of the police fire administration building for years to come. I talked about the purchasing of the property to the south. The other recommendation that we had is that we recommend that High Tech and WS and Winseth Smith Nolting be our contractor and engineer for the project. We also recommended the conceptual plan and the budget that they have put together for us that we worked through at our final meeting. That committee has disbanded since then, and it put together a committee of myself, the mayor, city administrator, police chief, and fire chief, if this moves forward, to oversee the project, to keep the cost under control and the project on time and on budget. Any questions?
Very good.
All right. I'd like to thank, Shar was one that I didn't thank for helping us out, setting up the meetings, working with us. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
I'm a little out of context here as usual with everybody, but I almost feel like we should ask the audience if there are any questions on that. Is that fair for me to do?
You might want to describe what we're talking about here? For
The real
land?
estate?
Yeah, do that land purchase that we worked on,
Okay, so
private, you know.
I'll just talk about it a little bit and see. During the process of the building committee, we went through many different scenarios. A lot of cost points, a lot of, we were going to go to the north and buy a lot and put the fire hall there. It went back and forth for quite a while. There was a property just to our south of the old school property that was for sale. And I think Eric Lee actually was the one that kind of brought that up. But anyway, we looked into that and decided to look at moving the police and admin and planning and zoning over off-site and leaving this for the fire. Trying to look 20, 25 years, however far you can look into the future, who knows? But I think what we've done is something that'll service the community for quite a while. And I think it's going to be something that we're all going to be proud of doing. And it's a $4.8 million project, both phases combined. So since then, we put an offer. Mr. Person went and approached the people, and they accepted the offer, and we've got a purchase agreement on the property, correct? To close day after tomorrow,
Tomorrow, assuming you guys vote to
Tomorrow?
approve it, yeah.
if we vote to approve it. So, I mean, I'm feeling like, I hope this isn't taking anybody by surprise. We've kind of publicized it quite a bit and talked about it, but do we want to give them an opportunity to say anything, comment on it before we go ahead and vote?
I think one comment I would like to make is strictly that the citizens that are on that committee voted unanimously for this to occur. It was not a divided vote, it was a unanimous vote from the committee.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, is that okay with you guys? This is a little out of character, but, yeah, come on up, state your,
Is this the school property?
You have to get up to the microphone, please.
yeah.
So the school and just south?
No, no, you really need to come up and identify yourself, sorry, but we got to do that.
Doug Oster, I live on County Road 16. I'm a little bit lost here as far as, is it the, I know originally they were talking about buying the school, is that the building they're talking about?
It's not the school, it's the next property to the south. The school is about a 5-acre parcel, this is 7 acres.
Oh, okay.
Right,
Okay,
right south of the school property.
okay, all right, sounds
So
good,
it's right
thanks.
there. You
Thank you.
bet.
Yeah, it's just north of the 14 Lakes Brewery. 7 acres back there, and we looked at the school property, a lot of money, then we looked at a couple lots
To the north.
just north of here. One of them was taken or something. And then this property came up, which actually was very nice. And the purchase price, you want to
Yeah.
talk about it, was $170,000.
170,000, 7 acres, and it will be a beautiful site when it gets improved, so. We all feel good, the committee all feels good about it. I just thought I'd open it up if anybody's got a question or comment about it. Otherwise, I think we should go ahead and make a motion. Should we make a motion on the property first?
I so move.
I'll second it.
What was your motion?
To buy it.
Purchase the property,
It's the property.
and that the
Okay,
purchase agreement has been signed
motion
on.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, Shar. Secondly, we do have the high-tech proposal now. This is an architectural engineering proposal, not a construction contract. But Andes, do you guys want to come up and tell us what we're doing, or do you want to, what are we going to do with this? Do we go through it? Come on up and dazzle us a little bit.
All right. So I'm Andy Pickar with High Tech Construction. We've had the privilege of working with Mayor Nevin and the building committee, kind of going through a bunch of renditions on different spaces for both the city hall and the police facility, as well as fire hall. We're renovating this building for the fire hall. We've worked together probably 3 or 4 renditions to get
Yeah,
this,
right.
to get to where we are. Initially, we looked at trying to put everything in one house, in this property here. And through that, working with the building committee, we've came to the two properties, renovating this facility as well as the new construction on the property they just acquired.
So I'm just going to jump in with you on this a little bit.
Please do.
Through Sourcewell and the Gordian Group, which is, I don't even know what you call them, but it gives us the ability to select a contractor as long as they work through that group. We're going to, I think what we're going to do is sign a construction contract with you, maybe not to exceed, maybe isn't the right word. We're going to try to work the number backwards and save the city as much money as we can, is ultimately what we're going to try to do. And we have the ability to do that with.
And just the
High-tech.
Gordian Group is basically it's a contract where we've already bid through the state program dollar amounts for everything in construction, from 2x4s to roofing to everything. So our pricing is already established, if you will. And then with our construction through that, we kind of back into a number like Mayor Nevin's saying. So the pricing is somewhat established based on the building that we're doing, so.
And the benefit that I see going this way is that High-Tech is their performance, they've showed their performance ability in town. For years they have, recently they've done the school, but they've proven themselves. And if we put it out for an open bid, I think we pretty much have to take the low bidder, and that could be somebody from Fargo or Jamestown, we don't know where they're gonna be from. These guys are right here. I mean, so I think it's a tremendous thing for the city to be able to just work directly with them.
Another point, it'll expedite our schedule, construction schedule, as we've discussed with the building committee, is because our pricing is already established, it'll tremendously expedite that schedule and the construction process.
Aaron?
Question for you.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, you can work with local contractors and so forth directly?
Absolutely, that would be
Even though they are
all
not-
of our intent.
Even though they're not necessarily part of, so if we request it, then you could honor that request?
Correct, yep, and
Okay.
I know the building committee was very adamant of that, involving as many community contractors as we can, and that is definitely our intent as well. would be-
So we don't want to burden them with too many people overflowing them in the construction trailer and that, but we do have a hands-on, we do have a say of what they're going to do and how they're going to proceed. They're going to come forward with things that they can save us money on or things that'll cost more. We're going to work hand in hand with them weekly for sure.
Yep, it's still very much a team effort on this.
So, I mean, I think it'll be, go ahead.
I do have one question on this. So this is for the design phase, it's not for the construction, correct?
That is correct.
The
This
construction is a separate
contract,
contract.
correct, this contract is design phase only.
So if we chose to go with Sourcewell through the Gordian Group, that would be a contract through them,
Yep,
correct?
exactly.
Okay,
It'll
so
be a
they're
later
two
contract.
different-
Okay, so I
So
probably
they're two
pulled
different
that.
decisions at this point.
Yes.
So we're just going to make a motion to approve the
architectural.
architect engineering phase of this with High-Tech, correct?
That's what this is for. This is not for the actual construction.
One other thing I want to say about the Gordian Group and Sourcewell, and then we'll quit on that, but you can, any construction company can be a part of that group. There's only two in our area that have elected to do that, and it's Norson and High-Tech. The other ones have had, I believe they've had the option to it, and for one reason or another elected not to. So we're not trying to close anybody out or shut any doors or anything, but I mean, this is kind of where we're at, and it's how we got there.
Yep. So this proposal, again, just to clarify, is for the design and design documents for the facilities. And High-Tech is planning to team with WSN to generate those documents.
So I have a couple questions. I think Mayor Nevin's talked about cost quite a bit, and we're all here trying to save money for the city residents. But, and I'll just be candid with you, it's when I was working, when I saw a cost of $200,000 for this and $100,000 for that, it was like someone just rounded it up. And we don't know what's in that cost. would you share the makeup of the costs with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So all these costs have been budgetary costs, if you will. The design, as far as the construction costs that we've shared with the building committee, have been very, very high-end budget costs that we feel we're comfortable building the buildings that have been proposed for that amount. You know, once we start selecting carpeting and flooring and paint and all that, those construction costs would fall into place there. As far as the design side, we've worked with WSN to generate cost of where that's at and historical data to determine our fee for the design side.
So one of the questions that I had was in your proposal, you talked about additional hours for architectural services at $90 an hour. When would we get charged additional hours for architectural services? Because we have no idea how many hours you have in the
So-
project. And let me just keep going here.
Yep.
You said 200,000. If I take 50 out and I use that for an architect at $90 an hour, that's 555 hours of time. So there, I think, and then you wanted to bill percent complete, and you know what the costs are, we don't know what they are, but that's a roll-up of what you do every month. But I just think we need to have more details here, and I'm hoping that the 200,000 is not a flat fee, that we could get by with maybe 100 or 150, something like that.
It is a flat fee.
Well, then
See, and with that flat fee, they're going to give us a book. They're going to have every piece of tile, carpet. I mean, it's the detail into it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason they're getting paid for it is after we receive all that information, we could go put it out to bids. So they're getting reimbursed for their time of putting that together. Right?
That's
Is
correct.
that not right? I mean,
Yep,
that's
that is
correct, right,
correct,
Eddie? So they're going to have engineered architectural drawings, work with staff on the changes. I mean, we've talked about all this. We're going to, and you're right. I mean, we don't know how many hours and how many rounds
I
of
have
that
no
we have.
confidence that I understand the scope of this thing. And my preference is that we'd only issue a go-ahead on the admin building, not the fire hall right now, because we don't need to do that. But I would just do the design first and worry about the project management later.
And that proposal is for the design scope of this, these two
But
projects.
the 200 would include your construction admin costs too, right?
That's correct for.
So, but if we took
for
that
sort of
out,
service.
because we're not ready for that yet. And I'm not trying to throw a wrench in it, but I think we need to understand a little more. It seems like $200,000 to do the design is an awful lot of money.
Well, we've actually done the design.
Then it's,
Now we've got to
Even more money.
legitimize the design that we've done.
We need to go through and pick selections. We need to pick exact flooring, we need to pick exact light fixtures, all of that. So this proposal includes the civil engineering design, so it'd be all the site work involved with everything going on both properties. The architectural, which is your building envelope and all that, mechanical, electrical, structural. So it's all disciplines across the board that get rolled into this.
You know, soil borings, you called me up the other day and said we excluded that, but really, it's in there. They're going to, so they're going to.
that's the question I had. That should be in there.
It
It
is,
is.
yes,
We
and that was
shouldn't have to
that was
pay
a
extra.
typo.
Yeah.
I talked to Dave about
And
that.
he called me up right after we got it and said there was an error, and it is in there.
So is everything going to get designed to the Minnesota building codes? And we're going to
Absolutely.
have inspectors from St. Paul come for like plumbing and?
Yep.
Then again, when would we get billed for an extra $90 an hour? I don't understand.
It wouldn't be unless we were going something beyond the envelope of what we have discussed. If you wanted another addition, beyond what we've kind of outlined a little bit, then at that point, but otherwise, we have a full packet put together for
So
everything.
there's really no way at this step that we could split this up into two parts or something. It's really just a package at the 200,000 level. In other words, there's,
We could pull out the construction admin cost if that was desired. But, yeah, I mean,
You know,
otherwise,
For the fire hall, all I say is, I've talked to Chip a little bit, and he's worked out, it's not that has told me he wouldn't need somebody to do drawings, but he's done some conceptual stuff with this building. And I'm just looking at trying to save some money here. And we've seen a flat fee of 7 million on the overall project, but we haven't seen any details. We don't know what's in your roll-up, and that would.
Well,
and-
okay,
and that one's
I'm gonna be candid, because I always am too, but
Yeah.
we started back, I'm gonna say 2 or 3 months ago, hiring WSN to do and I think we gave, how much was that, $4,300 or something? We authorized you guys to start looking into it. I don't, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but then we brought in High Tech into it, and the two of them agreed to share the cost of that $4,300. So I think what we've gotten to date for that $4,300 is a real value. I mean,
Yeah, we went a lot further than we typically do.
yeah,
With that initial schematic design.
yeah. And part of this, Dave, is, High Tech has proven themselves.
Right.
And I think most people that have worked with them, and we could do that, check references and go check them out.
I don't begrudge or want to deny them from making any money, but I'm just kind of curious on how you come up with $200,000.
Well, I think part of that is just experience and the scope of the project, and throw a dart at the board.
A lot of it's based on percentages of the anticipated construction cost. And so it's based on a percentage-wise of that. And then we just round it up or down, to a more even number, so.
So maybe Dave should.
Can I
Yeah.
try to help answer your question, Dave?
That's worse.
Sure. So the work that both WSN and High Tech did at the city's request, the $4,300, was really looking at a number of scenarios, looking at conceptual designs, design development stages of a project. And if you're familiar with that, eventually you get to this point where you've made some final decisions on your building concept, where it's going to go, and then you're at the stage of putting together the CDs, the construction documents. And that's where you really get down into the detail of all of the things that Andy was trying to explain, the electrical, structural, civil site, architectural drawings, everything that you're going to need to submit for permitting and getting to the level of construction, finally getting to the point of putting a cost to all of those items. And, to split that all up, yes, it can be done, but at this stage, it's based on experience and past projects, kind of similar to, all of the construction costs that going through Gordian Group have been established through past projects.
Your engineering fees will come out of there also, right?
Yeah, it's all part of that,
Yeah, so that's,
So-
putting the whole package together is what it is.
yeah. I think we're not going to deny your request if you want more details, but at this point, it's just based on what we feel the level of scope of this project is and a reasonable fee to complete CDs.
But my only concern again is, it's a flat fee,
Yep.
no matter what happens. But then at some point, you're going to come back and say, well, that wasn't included in what we were thinking. So now we have to redesign it at $90 an hour. But we don't have anything that describes what you were thinking or what you were proposing. You see where I'm coming from? The car, we thought the car had power steering. No, you in your head had manual steering, and now we want to put power steering, and you're going to tell us it's more money. I just don't want to have people coming back and saying, you
Yeah,
have change orders for everything we're doing here. And,
Completely understand.
You know?
And we wouldn't do that because our reputation in the area, and we wouldn't get very far if we, nickel and dimed everyone. But our proposal's based on, again, that, what we've established with the building committee. And, and it's those documents that we kind of set the footprint of, and kind of where we're going. So, if it deviates a little here and there, it's not a big deal at all. That's in there more to protect us if we decide, or they decide, everyone decides that we're gonna add another structure, or, something of,
If the footprint gets bigger, I get that part, that's, yeah.
So-
Now, can I ask just
Yep.
one more? So now the price, you gave us a budgetary price of 4.7?
correct.
So when you get done with the
construction costs.
design, you're going to roll up the cost with the committee. And what if you come up and you roll up the cost to be 4 million? What's the project going to cost the city? 4 million?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That construction
That's what I
cost
wanna hear.
is truly
Yeah.
a budget.
All right.
And our intent is to completely beat that budget.
Yeah.
By as much as we can. And those are going to be decisions with the new building committee of what finishes and what extent.
All right.
That would drive it, so.
All right.
So Andy, I got to ask you one question on here. There's two parts to this contract. One is architectural services, one is construction administration. At this point right now, we really are just doing the architectural services,
That's
correct?
Yep.
So at this point in time, should that construction administration even be here?
It doesn't have to be, no. If you guys would prefer it to be separated, that would be fine.
But I mean, so is there a line item credit for that or not? I mean, would we expect a deduct in pricing if we took the construction administration out of there?
Yeah, if we didn't proceed with construction administration, then yes, we could take that out.
And you're not prepared to tell us how much that is
I
at this point?
don't know what that is, unfortunately. Apologize.
But I mean, we are going, the first phase is the architectural, we're going to get a final packet and bid number, so.
My question is, you're not going to change from your architect once you get into construction.
No, but we're not approving the construction contract at this time. We're just going for architectural.
200,000 you are.
That's
we're not.
that's what Dave was saying. He wants to see just the design.
So I think what
Detail.
Aaron's getting at is that if we, as a design firm, no matter who builds it, we would still do the construction administration, no matter who the contractor is that builds it. The architect, the engineers would all
Right.
still be involved
That's what
throughout
he's
the
saying,
construction
right.
process. So it would be, you can approve it now or later, but they're kind of tied together, I guess.
As long as we built off of your plan that you supplied to us,
That's right.
you would follow it through.
Correct.
But I'm assuming your billing is adjusted to a point to where we don't just get handed a $200,000 bill, because we're not at a construction phase, we're at a design phase.
That's correct, yes.
So
It would be
the
billed-
original bill would come in at a lower rate, 100,000 or 125 or whatever it is.
And I would just soon just do the admin building first, separate, and let the other one go.
Well,
We know
we
how
are.
much that is, but they don't need
We
to
are,
work
there is
on it.
another number for the
Right.
fire hall, so.
And that, I think, in my world, I'd just sit on that for a while.
Yeah,
'cause
so
that's not-
we're going to put the fire hall on hold and not indefinite hold. But things may change with what we do with that in the 6-month or whatever time frame it takes to do this too.
Absolutely.
Chip, we're not going to put it on hold. I don't mean on hold. No, that's not what I meant. Okay, well, I'm comfortable with it, but how do you, what do you guys want to do with it?
I'm done talking. I've got my answers.
I didn't catch what you said, I'm sorry.
Well, I've got my answers to the questions I
Okay,
had.
so you're satisfied?
Yep.
So would a motion be something like we go ahead and make a motion to approve this based on a credit or something back at the construction administrative part of it at this point? Why don't you, sure, come on up.
And Doug Oster, I've worked for healthcare facilities for 26 years now, worked with a lot of big contractors, Knutson, Norson, Krauss Anderson. We've worked with High Tech for 4 years over at the hospital in Crosby, And I've never, ever worked with a more reputable construction business in my life. Sorry, Dave, I don't know your work, but I've never worked with a more honest group of Craig Farabin and High Tech, so just lay it to rest. If you think they're going to shaft you, they're not, I guarantee you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
But I guess I'll leave it up to one of you to make a motion. If you want to get a breakdown deduct for the construction admin portion of it, then make the motion, and we'll go with that. I'm not sure how to do it.
Well, I don't know. To me, it makes sense to just let them do both. But I would just make a motion that we allow them to start, well, let me back up here a little bit. On the money, do we have money we don't have money to pay for this yet.
We do.
We do.
Money.
We'll talk about
Your money.
that when we get to F2.
Money everywhere, I guess. All right, I'll make a motion that we allow High Tech to move on first, the city admin and police station at $200,000. And we're going to just temporary hold on the fire hall. When time is ready to work on that, we can do that. And Mike Linus is going to figure out where the money's going to come from.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any conversation, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, Sheriff. All right, you guys, we'll be talking, huh?
$2 million.
Huh?
That's
Two?
the max cost, $2 million.
All right, well, we got to work on it. Okay, next is Patty Norgard and the Audubon Bird City Celebration.
Mayor Nevlin and councilmen, about two and a half years ago, right, I sat across from Carol Henderson, who is a retired 41-year veteran of the Minnesota DNR, Director of Non-Game Wildlife, and he asked me if Cross Lake would like to become a bird city. And I'm thinking, what the heck is a bird city? Well, over the past 2.5 years, we have found out what a bird city is. And so I'm standing here very proud to say that on May 18th, we will be the 4th city in the state of Minnesota to become a bird city. And I'm not going to talk directly to you because I know that you all have seen this many times, and so I want to make sure that the audience and our TV audience hears about the events that they have planned. Beginning at 8:30 to 9:30 is a bird walk led by Judd Brink, who's got backyard birds. They're going to have bird banding. They're going to have Martin House, and the Raptor Center will be here. Of course, everything always ends with cake and coffee, so there will be food at the end of this celebration. And to receive the award for Cross Lake will be Councilman John Andrews. That is the basis of that day. However, I want to say that Cindy Nelson, who is the current president of the Paul Bunyan Scenic Byway, and her team consisting of Judd Brink, Michael Blasey, Catherine McGoldrick, and a host of others that have made this past 2 years finally come to fruition. So if Carol was here, I'm sure he would say, well done, and certainly thank you to the Cindy Nelson and the Paul Bunyan Scenic Byway team. So please come to May 18th. It begins at 8 a.m. It's over at the Army Corps of Engineer. And one of the things that we found out at the Senior Expo was that seniors in Cross Lake are looking for additional activities. So this is one thing that you can put on your list and come and join us on Saturday, May 18th. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
Yep.
Okay, next we have Dean Fitch with a EDA update.
I'm not going to touch it.
Why?
Quick update for you, principally about the small business initiative, but a couple other things going on with EDA. Oh, I'm sorry, my name's Dean Fitch. I'm president of EDA, and Mr. Mayor and council member, we're delighted to give you this regular update. Really 4 quick points. One, the small business initiative. I'm going to talk about that a little. Collaboration with Crosslake Communications, our regional workshop, and then an updated calendar. First off, on the implementation of the small business initiative. This has been going on, we've been talking about this for a while, and where we are at the moment is we're writing an overall story about what the small business initiative is and how it works. And that will be done in May. We have secured a website domain name. It's called crosslakeeda.com. Website construction is going to be done for us by Crosslake Communication. That's due in June. And then our PR campaign rolls out June to July with local advertising support, July to September. And then we begin digital and mailing outreach working with Crosslake Communications. So this is really the early stages of what happens next and the timing of it all. One of the things that I really wanted to raise up for you is that Crosslake Communication has done a wonderful job of working with us and supporting us in this project. Too wide there. Among other things, they have already provided a workspace. So if you are here for a week or two visiting and you want a workplace with high-tech connections, connectivity, digital outreach, and all the other things that you might want to do, we have workspaces inside Crosslake Communications. You merely call there and make a reservation, and you can go in and use the workspace. There's also conference rooms there. So if you're, again, someone visiting and you want to put together a group for a meeting, you can do that. This is to appeal to particularly our people that have property, live here, but maybe have businesses elsewhere. And we're trying to draw them here on a more regular basis. So the idea is simple enough. If you're here for a long weekend, well, why not move the business here and make it more than a long weekend? And this is a sort of a form of a transition way of getting it done. So Crosslake Communications has already stepped up in helping us with getting this put together, not only with the conference space, the workspace. They're going to develop a website for us. And then they do a lot of digital mailers and physical mailers to their market, which is everyone who has a residence in Cross Lake. And we'll be able to hitchhike on that, so there won't be any cost to us to do so. So we can communicate through their mailers and through their digital outreach by tagging our messages onto that. Another topic that's been going on with us, regional workshop. We had a regional workshop a month ago, and we talked about topics that maybe affect the economic development of not only our own community, but the communities around us. And the original thought process around this was that we are quite active, as you know, with Bladick, but their focus, they come as far north, obviously, as Cross Lake. And I call Sheila up every week and say, what are you doing for us for the money that we give you? So that we remind them that they're working for us. But there are a lot of smaller communities, even further north of us, that really are not doing the right kinds of things or enough of the right kinds of things to build their EDA kind of efforts. So we had this, we called a regional conference. We invited the communities around us, not knowing what would happen. And we had a discussion and identified a whole series of topics that they felt affected them. And then we asked them to narrow it down to 4 topics: housing, funding sources, infrastructure, and branding. Branding being helping people be aware of them. And
So and they wanted to have a follow-up, so we're gonna have a follow-up meeting in October to discuss these four subjects with that team. We'll see what happens. I don't know what will come of this. It's making us, we really do, let me put it this way, we really do understand that, particularly in economic development issues, they're not just centered in our own town, but it is a regional thing that we need to work on. So we're trying to look at that and address it. I don't know where it'll go. Maybe a year from now, there will be nothing of it, but I just thought that it would be interesting to get these other communities to talk with us and see what their thoughts were. And it was interesting how the topics that came up, housing, funding sources, infrastructure, and branding, were the same ones that we've been talking about. So clearly there's some commonality. And then finally, you've seen this before, this is my updated calendar, our primary topics for us for each month. What we have coming up in June is our first cut of our budget for 2020. No meeting in July. August, the final budget plan, and then to bring it to you. September, we're looking at initiating our comp plan review. Where are we and where we think we're going with it. October, our meeting will be that regional workshop again. November, the Green Step Cities review. In December, we do our first evaluation of the Small Business Initiative to see how we're doing. So that's a quick update on what's going on with us. And any questions for me? And if not, I'm just delighted to be able to bring you this report today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Okay, next we have the Pell Foundation presenting a donation to the Park Department. I don't know who's going to do that. Looks like you are.
I do not believe we have a member present. Can we still accept the donation?
Absolutely.
Okay. After talking with the Powell Foundation, they decided to chip in for half of the trailer purchase from CHIP. They are donating $1,250. They're covering exactly 50%. So this is going to be
Who did that?
Powell Foundation, Parks and Library Foundation. So really the scope of this, last council meeting, Chip wanted to put his aluminum trailer up for surplus and sell it, and I had a light bulb go off in my head after the council meeting. The Parks Department has never had a trailer, believe it or not, and I believe this will save us a lot of time and be a good thing for the Parks Department. So, and we have the money in the budget. I already talked to Mike. Correct.
Also move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, TJ. Okay, we get to hear from Ms. Netco.
Pat Netco, Cross Lake resident and business owner, and I am also chairperson of the connectivity group for the Cross Lakers. We are requesting tonight permission to use part of the budgeted $10,000 for the signs. You all have a copy of this. This is the design of the sign, which is done by Upland Advertising out of Merrifield. And all the specs are on your sheet. The three signs together would cost $5,895 out of our $10,000 budget. We would like to have your permission to accept this design and have Upland start the process. It takes about a month for them to make the signs. We have designated 3 locations. We have verbal agreements with property owners. We have actually several locations that we're looking at if some of them actually don't come through. The locations are listed in your letter, and we will have by the next meeting written permission from property owners to put the signs on their property. They cannot be in the county right-of-way, so it's important that we identify these. So I've talked with Tim Bray, and he said first thing we need to do is have a letter to you and then get permission to you for these signs to be approved. And then we need to have go through him with all the locations and the setbacks and all that, and have him approve that. So we need your approval first, and then we can work on getting the approval for all the locations. We're only doing 3 instead of 4. We decided to not go up on 66 north of Moonlight Bay. There's already a Welcome to Cross Lake sign at the border of Manhattan Beach. And so one of them is out on County Road 16 at West Shore Drive. The other one is out on County Road 3 on the back side of the sign that says Welcome to 50 Lakes. So it'd be kind of at a V angle, and we have permission from the city of 50 Lakes, and we're working with the property owner there to make sure that they're okay with that. So it's basically in the same site as that. I've also had a conversation with TJ, who has some piles of rocks that he would like to get rid of, and this might be a really good use for your trailer, TJ. Your new trailer can haul rocks, which would be really awesome, which would, no?
No,
No?
that's an emphatic no.
Oh,
But I do have a question when you're done, so go ahead.
okay. There will be no plants or anything, as it looks in the picture like there's some plants in there, so this is very low maintenance. If you want an idea of the material that's listed there, the sign outside the chamber building, the green sign that says Welcome to Cross Lake was designed and made by Upland Advertising as well. So our preference is to go with this design, and we're asking for your blessing on that.
What
Yeah.
happened to the beauty spot of Minnesota? That's what you brought last time.
We've gone through many different things with our committee. We've gone through different designs, different designers, and this is the one that we came up with the loon on it, is the simplest, and this is what we went with through the connectivity group. Any other questions? Mike?
No, my question was, we have a different logo, and I didn't know that we talked about changing that, was my question. So you've answered that.
Sure. Well, what we're looking at doing with this is the design of this sign can also be made with the idea of the blue background and the same font and the loon into possibly banners, vertical banners that could be put on the 5 new light poles that will hold those. And it could be a seasonal change with those. It also can be put in front of businesses with different signs or flags or something. It's something that can be developed, and it's a branding, so that it's something that will go along with the loon and Cross Lake and the water, and it's a modern look, and we're looking at branding and having everything, different signage around town look the same.
So are the oars part of the chamber logo?
They are, but it's also the Cross Lakers. It's kind of become our brand. Cindy, do you want to speak to that at all? No? The Cross Lake, I think that's become kind of what we're looking for.
You're all trying to tie it together, there's no competing factor or anything like that?
No, no.
It's a nice looking sign.
There's basically no maintenance with these signs. The rocks that will be placed will have landscape fabric underneath, and so that you can mow right up around them, and there's no maintenance.
I don't have any questions. They look good, Pat.
We're also looking at our wayfinding signs that we had talked about before. That is something we'll be coming back to you with in the next, I've talked with TJ about this, of having wayfinding signs in 2 or 3 different locations. We had talked about this before, but there are quite a few more steps to go in that process right now, so we're not quite ready to present that.
Okay, and we did budget 10,000 for signage this year? Yeah, so this is 6 or almost 6 of it?
$5,895.
Yep. Okay, does anybody want to make a motion?
That's so move.
I'll second it.
Okay, we got a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Okay, now we got a resolution accepting donations. So I gotta read this. Whereas the city of Cross Lake encourages public donations to help defray costs to the general public of providing services and improving quality of life in Cross Lake. And whereas the city of Cross Lake is generally authorized to accept donations of real and personal property pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 465.03 for the benefit of citizens. And whereas said statute 465.03 requires that all gifts and donations of real and personal property be accepted only with the adoption of a resolution approved by 2/3 of the members of the city council. And whereas the following persons, or entities have donated real and/or personal property as follows. It's from David Potts for $140 towards the baseball uniforms. And whereas the city of Cross Lake will strive to use the donation as intended by the donor, and whereas the city council finds that it is appropriate to accept said donation as offered, now therefore be it resolved by the city council of the city of Cross Lake that the donations as described above are accepted as allowed by law. We need a motion
I'll
for
make a
that, Shar?
motion to accept the great donation. Thank you.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Now we got to discuss city emails. At the personnel meeting, we talked about that. Who was there? Dave?
I was there.
Schrupp? Was Schrupp there too, or? No, just me?
Me?
Oh, and Gary.
I was there, I think.
No.
No.
Anyway, us people on the council are getting emails on our personal email accounts, and I don't know if it's a good idea. You know, in case there was ever any question, or, what do you think about that, Brad? Do you have any opinion on that?
I would support having a
Separate email?
city email address, yes. One reason why would be that side of the room has to help keep track of our data, city data, and some emails to your personal accounts could be city data. And they don't know how to keep track of that if, you know, it's not through the city server.
Yeah,
There's
well, I
other
mean,
reasons too, but that's one. I mean, just data management, we're supposed to keep a copy of certain.
I don't want to
certain
have to give
emails.
up my email account to somebody to check for something or whatever.
I don't have
So we've never done that before, right?
That's correct.
So,
I would like to see it done. I think there's a lot of reasons to do it.
yeah. So I don't know, do we make a motion, or do you just look into it and, or do it?
It's about $3 a month.
For
you
each
need-
one of us?
Yeah, for each one, you need to make a motion. We'll go ahead and do that.
All right.
I'll move that we establish the email accounts.
I second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So how does the public find that email account? Through the city site, if they're going to send you emails?
And I'll let you know what your emails have been.
Can you write it down for me?
You want us to read it, huh?
Email them.
So I have a question for Brad or whomever. I get an email from someone because that's what's been listed when I ran for office and all that. What are the mechanics? Do I copy it to my city email account? Do I have the people write back to a different account? What are the mechanics of that?
That's a good question. I think we could develop a policy for that. I don't have an answer right now, but we
Okay.
could probably talk with maybe someone from the communications company or about what are some best ways to do that. But not all emails, but some emails need to be kept by staff, and they need to know how to, they don't know about it unless they know about it.
Right.
So we probably need a policy. And first step, I think, would be get city email. Second step would be, not everyone's going to maybe continue to, or always use that address, or you've got past emails. And how do we answer that? We can work on that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, good. Okay, now we got number 3 as a hottie here. How do we start this discussion? Brad, you wrote something up on it. The VRBOs keep coming up. And if anything, what are we going to do to regulate them, or?
Well, my email was simply, it doesn't really help the whole discussion, I don't believe, but at least to the extent you wanted to do it to raise revenue, then don't do it, because it can't be used to raise revenue. But that doesn't mean you don't want to regulate it for other reasons. I just heard revenue generation as in past council meetings.
That's what I wanted to do.
So, from others,
Yeah.
I've heard it too, and so I wanted to shoot that down because you can't do it. But other cities regulate it for other reasons, just, so if it's a nuisance, if neighbors are complaining about noisy parties or whatever you've been hearing from the
Well, or
public.
septic, sewer issues, I mean, there's parking.
Sure,
I mean,
that'd be
there's
a
a lot
public-
of issues about it that nobody really talks about. Nobody complains, there's not too many, was Eric in here? Eric, how many calls do you get on those that you know that it's a VRBO?
There's no telling that it's a VRBO.
Right.
We do have a social host ordinance, though, that allows us to cite someone who might be an ongoing issue. We do have a social host ordinance that allows us to cite the homeowner of any home, that whether it be a rental or whether they just be using it themselves and become a nuisance, and we can cite them for anything that happens at that residence.
So if you were to license or identify VRBOs, then if there was, then the neighbors would know it was. I mean, there would be an avenue to do it. I don't know how I don't have one next to me, so I don't have a personal experience with it. Some people don't like them.
Off the top of my head, I can't think of any in particular place in Cross Lake that is an issue, an ongoing issue right now.
Well, if I talk about it just a little bit, I'll have somebody that'll chirp up and say, yeah, I've got a neighbor that's got one, and, whatever.
Can't do anything until they tell me.
No, I know. But I mean, it's just how much of a problem is it, I guess, is the question. And do we want to look into it, right? Do we want to try to regulate it? Do we want to form a committee to look into it?
No.
It isn't just verbose, because it's anybody can rent their place.
Right.
So I just would zero in on them. But it's usually the neighbors that are going to tell you there's an issue. So, if we had a hotline or something that somebody could call in here.
Well, I think if we had some kind of ordinance against it, I think there would be more calls, because people would feel like they have.
But I think the chief's comment was that if it's the conduct, I mean, he has certain rules in the books already about noise and social host and some other things that would apply no matter how the ownership is structured. So do we need more rules is the question. I mean, he already has some tools in the toolbox. If city staff are telling you that we don't know how to regulate this problem property, I'm not hearing that, though. It's not revenue generation, it has to be, I'm not saying don't do it, it's just some cities have decided it's not, have done it and then gotten rid of it, some have just started it again. It's an ongoing debate, but what are you trying to stop or regulate?
Well, some of the things that we know are going on is that you've got a 3-bedroom place and there's 20 people in there. And they're parking on the drain fields and they're using it. It's overused. So the sewer, the water quality is an issue. But, how do you police that? I don't know.
Well, John could speak to that, but he just had a good memo about potentially regulating septic systems. Again, that could apply to whether it's a VRBO or just a family with, 12 kids, So that might be something you want to look at. I'm not saying don't do it. It's
Right.
just maybe look at what you're trying to fix, and maybe you can do it more broadly than a VRBO regulation. But he just made that email. That was to city staff just a couple days ago, actually.
Well, let's listen to Tim, Eric? And then maybe see if John wants to say anything. But
Tim Berg, 12038 Harbor Lane. I don't know if I'm one of the spearheading people of this, trying to figure out a way to regulate just vacation rentals as a whole. And I think what's happening in the county of Crow Wing is you have towns like Lakeshore, they just recently passed an ordinance. You have Pequot Lakes, who recently passed an ordinance. You know, initially when I started this, I started talking about how we had 272 homes in Cross Lake on VRBO. Ironically, and I don't find any irony in it, but I've had 3 people stop by my house in the last week, and just before this meeting, I went on VBRO in Cross Lake. It's down to 224 homes. So, I mean, people are hearing about what's happening, and the reason that I'm still pushing this, even though if we can't as a city make a financial impact to help, you know, pay for our services, we still have a responsibility to the safety of everybody that comes to visit our town. And that responsibility falls on resorts in the way that the Minnesota Department of Health comes to our place every single year and they inspect our cabins, they inspect my water, I have to have my septics regularly inspected. So if we're looking for the safety of all guests that come to our community, I just think it's fair that we broaden that safety and make sure that anybody who's renting their home on a regular basis has the same inspections, whether it be egress windows, whether it be proper parking, and keeping vehicles off the road so that we can have our police department and our fire department respond to calls in a proper time. And so what we don't know is exactly how many people are frustrated with vacation home rentals. I can tell you that since I started this, you know, a few months ago, I've talked to a lot of just random citizens that I haven't met in my life, and they're for some sort of regulation, and their frustration comes from when there is noise next door, when there is cars parking over the property line, when people are using their docks, when they have no way to call because there's no regulation. There's nothing in the books that they can use to call and make a complaint on. I mean, if it's loud at night, they can call the police, and sure, they'll come out and they'll stop it. But other than that, when it's overcrowded, when people are using their docks, when they're leaving their garbage all over other people's lawns, they just don't have the tools. And so I would ask that we would continue moving forward with trying to find some way to regulate and follow in the steps of Lakeshore and Pequot Lake and what I suspect will be the county, and finding a way to manage vacation home rentals so that everybody that works hard and retires up here, you know, gets that peace and quiet that they've worked so hard to earn. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. No, for the audience or the people, you know, there are people that come up here and buy houses to rent on VRBO. They don't, never plan on living in them. You know, and some may have 3 and 4 houses and they just rent them out. So
one of the deep holes we could get in is that we have rules on what you can do with your house. And I don't know that you can run a VRBO or a rental business out of a residential area.
Yeah, John, come on up.
I don't
Can
know
you
what the
touch on
details
any
are of
that?
our rules, but technically, you know, we could grab these people and say, you're running a business out of your home, if that's what it says, I don't know. But then,
It doesn't say that right now. It used to say you could rent out your property 4 times a year, and that has been removed from the ordinance. Right now, you can have a home occupation or a home business, as long as it falls in one of those categories that are listed in the table, Article 10 of the ordinance that talks about what uses are allowed. We really don't say whether you can have, rent your space out or not, and is that technically a business? It's not defined as that in our ordinance. So if you wanted to do that, you certainly could go through and change the ordinance and define renting out more than 3 times a year or whatever you want to do and say now that is a business use and you would need a conditional use permit. Do you want 240 plus conditional use permits to come through the planning commission in a short period of time? It's a lot of work.
well, on the other half, if we don't do something, then other people are going to say, well, you let those guys run a business
And what
out of their house and you're not doing, I'm going to just do the same thing.
Certainly.
You know?
One of the things we could look at is the one that Brad mentioned is just last week, we had one that we found out they built a house on a commercial piece of property without a conditional use permit, which they have to do, and their septic system is undersized. So if we're going to proceed on with the septic study that we're thinking about and the pumping, that may be an opportunity to check into each of these individual properties that we know based on the VRBO website or the Airbnb website. In that process, look and find out how many people are they saying can stay there? How does that we look at that for the number of bedrooms that they have, which is what you base your septic system on. And if they say it's a 4-bedroom house and you can sleep 12 people, and we look at their septic design and it says they only are designed for a 2-bedroom house, then we can go and say you need to upgrade your system to meet the requirements And until you do that, you cannot rent it. And if I find out that you're renting it, it's going to be a fine based on our administrative fines that we have available because your system is not designed for the use that you have going on there. But that's a lot of work.
So that's where it would get into the licensing of it, so that you could charge a fee that would cover the cost of managing it, huh?
It would be, yeah, you most likely would
You
have to.
can't make money off it, but you can charge a fee so that you could.
You most likely would
cover
have
the
to hire
cost
a
of that.
full-time person just to do that, just to regulate and look into the septics that you're talking about doing,
And
that we've
this,
talked
you could
about,
combine it.
and the VRBOs. I think that would be one FTE.
So you could
right
do
there.
that, or you could change the ordinance and say no rentals. I mean, that's the
And
the
how do you
extreme.
regulate that?
Well, it's all regulated. That's all the issue with regulating.
How do you enforce it? I think
Yeah.
that's what John's saying.
Right.
Because the way that it was set up before with the no more than 4 rentals per year, other than someone going out and driving by every residence in the house every Thursday, recording how many cars are parked there and what their license plate numbers are, and then going back on Saturday and going back the next week, how do you know how many people are there and how do you know who's changing hands and how many times they're renting it out? Because there's just no way to do that, short of a police
Well, I don't think
state
anybody
going out and
wants
doing
to
it.
do that.
Yeah.
That's not the intent, it's not the want, it's the overuse and the problems and the septic, the
It's going to be
sewers.
the neighbors that are going to call because they're tired of every weekend there's somebody new.
Oh, and what
And-
happens
and
then
there-
is,
you
I
know.
get one complaint, and then I go to that door, and I knock on that door, and they say, well, what about him and him and him? And pretty soon there's 40 complaints, and it just snowballs from there. So, yes, it's doable, but do you want to have another full-time employee just doing that in the city?
Well,
is
that's
my
a
question.
legitimate question, do we? I mean, is it something that we want to try to manage, you know?
Well,
But I
John
mean, that's what
recommended
it
that
would
that
take.
goes with a septic system, you know, we're talking about every 3 years pumping, making it mandatory for people in the city to protect the lakes and to make sure inventory of septics is right, so you don't have to extend the sewer system, which costs a lot of money. But that's a job that, it's going to take some time to do that, and it could be a job that they could look into rentals, too.
They could do it hand in hand.
Right.
I think the two go together, actually,
Yeah,
because you're going to
yeah.
be looking at the houses that are renting, and are their systems, they probably need more of a look than just the people that are up every weekend, and that's it. If it's being rented out by 20 to, 25 people every weekend, there's a really heavy use on that system that's probably not designed for anything near that.
So, John, you've found a guy this last week, and we won't name or whatever, but and you kind of tagged him. You shut him down, you said you got to come in and get a conditional use permit.
Yes.
Now there's 250 more in town, plus or minus.
Well, it would have to be something on a commercial piece of property that didn't get a permit properly to
Well, or
build.
it could be any residence too that's got a 2 or 3 bedroom and they're advertising 15 people can sleep there.
I would have to look, I would have to talk to the county, my supervisor.
I mean, it just
how would they
seems
want
to
us
me that
proceed
that
on
would be, but maybe not.
It would be, one of the suggestions was, well, I'll just only let 6 people stay there a night. And my question to the owner was, are you going to go in at midnight every night and count heads to ensure that there's only 6 people there? There's no way to regulate that. So the only thing we could do is look at the VRBOs, see what they're saying for the number of bedrooms that they have, and then verifying in their septic installation, which we don't have a lot of that stuff. There isn't a lot of them. We find a lot of times that there's a system out there that has been inspected, but we don't have the installation information because it's 25 years old.
Right.
So I don't know how big the tank is. I don't know how big the drain field is. Do you want those people to have to go and put in a new system? Again, that's, the regulation side of it and the enforcement piece. I understand we don't want to make a whole bunch of people angry and we want to make sure everything is up to date, but they see me coming now and people run. If we start doing that, it's going to get worse.
Just one other comment too, is just to compare, it's not about rental, it's about use. So there are lots of families that every year have 3 or 4 or 5 weekends where there's 20 people, 30 people, and that's the 4th of July. That's every cabin on the lake.
Yeah, no, I know.
How is that different?
Yeah.
So just think of what it's not meant to be discriminatory. I mean, if you're worried about septics or overuse or noise or all those things apply to every lake home in Cross Lake. So it might be more frequent, but you can only rent a VRBO for a few months a year, and so it's not a whole lot different.
Do you know how many,
12 months here.
Well, I know you can, but the market is, we have 3 months where people want to actually be here.
do you know how many of the neighboring communities are doing something about VRBOs?
Every community has talked about it, I would say, literally.
Do you know how many of them are moving forward with
Like
something?
I told you, some have just got it, some have gotten rid of it because they didn't think it was a good idea after trying it. There's not a right answer. I'm just making sure you think of the,
Yeah.
you can have ordinances that regulate some of the uses or the issues and not pinpoint VRBO. You can do both. I do agree with John, you are looking at more staff. Brainerd has a rental code ordinance, that's not VRBO specific, that's just rentals. They have more than one staff person to help with that, and they're a bigger town, obviously. But it's a lot of work trying to keep properties safe and regulated, and it might be well worth the expense, but it's a bigger undertaking than just drafting an ordinance, so I want to just make sure.
Yeah, no, I know.
Right.
Yeah.
But you have, I mean, the uses of residential property now, you're not out checking the list to everybody in the city. It just comes to you when it comes, and then you deal with it.
Correct.
And we could update that use and say something like 4 times a year or something is it. And if we happen to catch you, I'm not advocating, but it is an issue if somebody comes in and says, well, they're renting it out every weekend, that's a business, they're making money. Why can't I do something on my property? Or you told me I couldn't do it and they're doing it.
Well, back to its use again. If they live there, we're living there too. I mean, I work out of my home probably 40 hours a week.
Right.
Nobody seems to care because I live there. And I don't have people coming and going and buying things. I mean, nobody cares. So it's about use, not about trying to label it a business. I don't think is really relevant.
Well, we'd have to look at what the list of prohibited uses are.
So does it require parking? It might. That's an issue. But we can regulate parking. Does it overburden the septic systems? I think it does. We can regulate that. We can do it all too, but labeling it a business I don't think that's the issue. It's more, what's the public safety concern or the nuisance concern? Those are the things I think we want to focus on. And there are some, I think, and I'm not denying that.
Sure.
Especially ones that are, the larger the home, the more you can get a pretty big, but again, that can also be the family compound. And there are a lot of those.
Any more questions
No,
for me?
Tim, you got something else?
Yeah, so it came up a while ago, in regards to, one person complaining, saying, well, they're doing it, and they're doing it, and they're doing it, why can't I do it? If you have an ordinance and some regulation involved, when you apply for that applicant, like Aiken County has a really good ordinance that requires a house drawing with all the bedrooms. There's only 2 people per bed. And the other thing I was going to touch on, when it starts to snowball, well, they're getting away with it, well, they're getting away with it. You can charge up to a misdemeanor per day if you find that there's a vacation home rental that you put an ordinance in place and they're not abiding by the ordinance. You can fine them $600 a day. So there's incentive for the vacation home renter to play ball and do everything properly, because nobody wants to pay $600 a day. And I just think that I would ask that we please move forward and maybe put together some sort of committee to continue looking forward into this. Thank you.
Do you remember why, Aaron, why we got rid of it?
No, I don't.
I guess.
It's one of those that got changed and
It wasn't enforced, there was no way to enforce it.
I've had numerous staff, not just in this town, complain about them incessantly, was why I'm talking about it. I don't have personal experience since I don't enforce zoning, but I've had many zoning officials complain about how tough they are to enforce, the work of enforcement, unfairness because we don't, but to other arguments, there's some other ordinances we have that are more complaint-driven, so it's not maybe unique to VRBO. But other county staff or city staff have just complaint, just like when we talked about, this is an old topic now, I don't want to go there again, but docks, waterfront, surface water regulation, that was a big topic years ago. And our city and a lot of cities just choose to let DNR regulate that because it's just so hard to...
They can't do it either.
Well, anything that comes and goes, like a dock or a watercraft or a renter, that things that, structures that stay and are permanent, those things are easier to be objective and regulate. The more temporary uses are just a lot harder. Doesn't mean you can't. It's just, that's why they've gone away. It's a lot of work and it's hard to be fair on regulation.
And it's
But
just about impossible for them to track it and keep it. We don't have the staff.
if you had a dedicated staff person, we might have a different result.
Well, and that's a commitment we'd have to make if we were going to do it.
Young lady.
To do that. Catherine?
Catherine Funk, and we have a few businesses in town, and if you start regulating it and over-regulating it, people aren't gonna come here at all. So like you cap it, I know there's another community, and they're capping it at 4 times a year. Well, I don't know, our businesses rely on those few months out of the year, and I understand completely about the regulations, because we have to follow regulations, and I feel like the homeowner should have some kind of regulations, just a little bit, but don't cap it all the way, because you're taking it out of the people. We only have 4 months out of the year, and all of us with small businesses, the more that we can keep it more year-round, but maybe put it to 7 times a year, or, look
whatever.
at something, I understand both sides of it, because, just the extra runoff, the water quality, that's been a huge thing with the lakes, and making sure their shorelines are taken care of. How much usage are they getting? And are their sewers up to date?
Yeah.
It doesn't
It'd
take much
just be a
to
way to
have
check
somebody
that
come out
off.
and look at the sewer and update, and $200 you can get your sewer inspected. So, just don't cap it all the way.
Yeah, no, I don't know, and we're not looking at doing that.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I'll just say this, if you go into trying to regulate these RVOs, and you have to hire another person, and you're gonna end up paying $100,000 a year between paying him and his benefits and whatever else. So you regulate the RVOs, and all of a sudden, all these people that are renting these things, dump them on the market, drive the price of housing down, and then every taxpayer in this town is gonna pay more. The other thing is, we sit here and we talk about having a city tax. We need those people to come in here if it's gonna be anything. And if you're gonna drive the people out, then there's no point in having a city tax. So you gotta put things in perspective.
So do we form a committee to look into it, or do we let it die, or what do we do at this point? Try to get some,
Can I offer you a different suggestion? Mike, could you work with Eric and with John and start gathering some informal information for us for future discussion on VRBOs, on people, complaints, and so forth, so we get better, stronger data to see what the problem is. Maybe Eric and John would be willing to work with us to do that. I'm not saying big formal reports, I'm just saying informal information. Okay? They're both nodding their head. In approval.
Mark, got something?
Mark Wessels, 13336 East Shore Drive, Cross Lake. When I was on the council, was when the dock issue came up with regulating rentals of docks. And Brad was very good at that time and again tonight about pointing out how expensive and how difficult that is to, it's my buddy's boat. It's not a rental boat. I'm not charging him for it. How do you prove that he's paying for it? Same with a renter, you're gonna have the same problem. I'm just a friend of his. I'm just staying here for the week. How are you gonna prove that they're paying anything for it? You're gonna have to go to court. That's gonna cost a lot of money. You're talking about probably well over 100,000, closer to 200,000 to regulate this. The lady that was just up here made an excellent point. We have a bunch of business owners in here. We don't have a lot of resorts around here anymore. To get new blood in town, of course, everybody's complaining about all the parking out in front of all our businesses. If we chase away all the renters, I guess they'll all be empty again. We won't have to worry about parking, will we?
I think you're barking up the wrong tree here. You're making a lot of to-do about nothing. VRBOs should be regulated. We should look at them from the standpoint, we've got two cities nearby, Lakeshore and Pequot, that are doing it. That's our committee. We're also looking at, and we're going to recommend, that we do this sewer district where state law now says you have to have your tank inspected every 3 years. That's going to require an employee to do that. We're going to gather a ton of information from that over the next I would say give it 2 years. See what Lakeshore does with theirs, what Pequot does with theirs. Let's go over to the council meeting over there and see, is this working for you? Are you gaining anything by it? What Mr. Berg said isn't untrue at all. He's regulated, they're not. I understand that, but the cost to do what we're asking to do, we know where he's at because he's a resort and he's got a whole bunch of them. But to go start chasing all these other people down and then say, well, you know, I'm just a relative or I'm a buddy of his, I'm not paying any rent here. I mean, how are you going to prove all that? I mean, this is going to be, people are saying it's difficult. I don't think you guys are grasping how difficult. This is going to be a very difficult, very difficult thing. Gary was
Why
right,
did
and so was this lady that was just up here. We
Maybe
want
go to
these people in
Lakeshore or
town.
something and see how they do. See
Well, that's
see
our
what they do
committee.
that works. I don't think the intent is to chase anybody out of town.
Well, I think
I mean,
unintended
it might happen
consequences,
indirectly,
you might.
but-
Gary was right, and the lady that was just up here was right. We want those people coming to town spending money here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
My name is Tim Berg, 12038. It's Bayview Lodge Resort in Cross Lake. If we're really looking at it, we have truly 2 mom-and-pop resorts left in the area. As Mr. Wessel just stated, resorts are going. We're gone. And let's just call it what it is. Unregulated VRBO is putting us out of business. You go to my website, I'm relatively certain that of all the resorts on the Whitefish chain, I'm the only one. I have Town Square on my website. I've got Crafts and Cones on my website. I got every golf course in the area on my website. I got every restaurant in this town on my website. I'm not asking that we completely regulate VRBO as far as how many times a year they can rent. Just want a level playing field. We're going out of here. Resorts are gone. I mean, we can sit up here and discuss how hard it can be. Maybe one of the questions we need to ask is the state law requires that we can only charge as much as it takes to regulate,
To administer it.
to administer it. So, I mean, if you're talking that you have to hire another city employee, you know, if you're talking about it's going to be 100,000 plus with, you know, and insurance and all that stuff, then why is it that we can't charge $1,000 per year per VBRO home rental?
Or $300. $300 a year to license, you're there, and you got to play by whatever rules.
Even at
they are.
242, I mean, you're still getting up to close to 75,000. So, I mean, why can't we charge 300? And to my point, you know, if we're following other cities like Lakeshore and Aiken County and Pequot and Duluth, I mean, there's clearly a need for some sort of regulation. If we can charge that $300, we have other ordinances that we can look at, and there's a lot of common ground in all those ordinances. Nothing is impossible. The easiest thing you can do is say it's too hard. That's the easiest, and that's the lamest way out of this conversation. We deserve to have some sort of committee, or let's continue the discussions. I don't think tabling this is going to solve any problems. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you. Huh, there you go. Yeah, I don't think the point of this is to run anybody out of town. It's to try to manage a business that's being run here. I just don't know how you move forward. Because it'd be $300 a licensing fee, and then maybe they'd have to have their house inspected once a year or once every 4 years, just to see if they got smoke detectors and window, whatever, you know.
Well, if we prove to our auditor that our budget is the same as the expense, there's no worries, so that's fine. It
Well, I
just
mean,
can't, we just can't have a net positive, that's all.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, it'd just cover the cost of it.
Yep.
So, I mean, I'm kind of getting the feeling that nobody on the council here is really supportive of pursuing it at this point, but maybe we should just look into, I mean, I don't know if that's true or not, but.
We can usually get you other ordinances, that's not hard at all. It takes 2 minutes. You can talk with city staff about, you know, incidents.
Maybe we should look into it and come back and talk about it again. I might try to go to Lake Shore or something and see what they do.
Sorry.
Come on,
Catherine
Catherine.
Funk again,
Yeah.
Cross Lake. Everybody who has a rental is bringing in income. And if they had to apply for a permit, at least they would have some kind of a guideline, you know, and it makes it fair for the resorts. Because, I mean, like, for their little $300 that they're gonna do, it's not gonna matter.
Yeah, right.
So like, just like tabling it, just like bring it and, you know, and start bringing it to people so that they just know that we're watching them, or you're watching them, or someone's watching them. You know, don't just be like, let's table it, like, let it come into effect, like, talk about it quicker than, you know, be respectful.
Hey, I'm
for
all
the
for that.
people.
I just don't know if
Be
anybody
respectful
else
for the
is.
next person.
Why
So-
don't we have the planning and zoning group look at it?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm,
You know,
You're not allowed to hide, Mark.
have the commission,
let Joel take it over, huh? Yeah, I don't know, or, you know, as for a committee, if anybody wants to volunteer and be on a committee, I mean, that'd be good, just to look into it, go see what the other towns are doing. Catherine? Yeah. Okay, well, let's do that until the next meeting, and then we'll look into it internally too, but if you want to be on a committee to look into it in the public there, Shar, can you do something to sign them up and just see what they come back with?
You can't appoint people to the next council meeting.
Till the next,
After they're gonna turn in an application, you're gonna appoint them at the next council meeting. It's a process, just,
yeah,
yeah.
everything's a process.
Yeah.
But I would say, I
That's
mean,
not tabling, that's something.
right, it's something. Okay, so Shar says we gotta sign up for the committee. The next meeting, we'll appoint you to the committee and,
And give them a scope of what they're supposed to do, maybe?
yeah,
In a timeline?
in a timeline.
Yep.
so when are we
6
gonna,
months.
when are we gonna get the scope and timeline done? Who's the "we"? You looking at me?
Well, you know what, I'm gonna try to go over to Lake Shore, one of them that are doing it.
Well, we have those. We have Breezy, we have Lake Shore, we have,
Aiken County
we got
is in your
Aiken, we
packet.
have all this stuff.
Well, you can get some feedback as
Yeah.
well, though.
Yeah,
You could talk
right.
to city
Right.
staff is what I'd recommend, and not a council member probably. I would talk to whoever has to enforce it and just ask how it's going. That's a phone call.
Okay, well, Catherine, put a group together for next council meeting, would you please? All right, so, it's tabled, or we just let it go?
No, I think same way you did the building committee and the water quality committee, same thing.
If applications are submitted, you can then, next meeting, take that, you know, vote on something at that point, if there's any volunteers.
But Dave, I don't believe you need the whole council on this committee.
No, I'm not, I'm
Okay.
just
Okay.
thinking that.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
That's why I brought up
That's not
planning
what
and
I'm saying.
zoning. I thought that fit in a regulation, and why did we get
Well, they
rid of
look,
it?
they look at ordinances and stuff, but let's find out what the need is and anything, that kind of thing, before we get them involved. Okay?
Yeah, I think Tim might want to be on the committee, whoever, we'll see who comes forward.
Yeah.
But let's just leave it
Okay.
at that, huh? Do we have to make a motion or anything for that, or just let it go?
No, that was good.
Okay. We're going to let that go. Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, well, let's talk about something with no controversy and all kinds of fun.
Can we
It's
get
a,
order, maybe? People stop talking?
Yeah. We're still in meeting here, folks. Okay.
all right, let's try that again. So let's talk about something fun, sales tax, local option sales tax. A short time ago, the council approved up to $750 for a sales tax study to be performed by the University of Minnesota Extension Agreement. What you have in front of you is a copy of that service agreement. It's a standard boilerplate agreement, so there's two things we need to talk about with this. One is Attorney Brad Person has already looked at this. It's a boilerplate type of agreement, and the cost is not $750, it's $1,000. So we need to authorize us to spend $1,000 to do this and to execute the service agreement for that project.
What is the timeline on them doing that, Mike?
What they'll do is they put a broad timeline in there going to about September. You know, this is a survey, so it does take a period of time to do it. We'll approve it, or hopefully this will be approved tonight. And then later this summer, maybe early fall, we should have the results. I don't think it'll take till September. That's really not under our control. It's about the data that's available and the responses that are received on that data.
And does this report tell us how many outside people pay what percentage, kind of? I mean, do they break it down where the money comes from?
It depends on the data points they're able to collect. So if the report you'd received earlier, as an example, was a very comprehensive report for Brooklyn Center, I believe it was. Now, they had a great number of data points, obviously, because they're quite more diverse than we are. But what this study will do is look at the data points that are available, like restaurants, tourists, gas stations, for example, things like that, and try to make a determination. They already know the retail sales. What the study will do will try to determine where they're coming from, or what group of people are making those sales up.
Okay.
Okay?
Mike, do we also not have to designate 3 different percentages?
No, we don't.
We don't,
Right.
but we can request them.
The purpose of this is for a study to find out the sales tax that's being collected now and where it's coming from. Whether or not you want to go and request a local option sales tax is where you request a percentage. So you would add it on to this data. So whatever that number comes out to, you would be used to determine your percentage or your amount.
Yeah, this will tell you the size, the amount that comes into the area.
Okay.
It'll tell you the size of the pie.
Okay.
And who's paying it. Locals or
And
visitors.
it would give a good estimate of who's paying what.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I so move we allow $1,000 for this survey
For the study, yep.
study.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, then the second part of that would be to authorize me to, and staff, authorize staff to execute the contract with the University of Minnesota.
So move.
Second. Second. We have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Carries.
Okay, now this one, the sales tax is directly related to what we're going to talk about next. And it's a letter from back in April from David Brown Associates, from one of his colleagues, Jason Murray, who put this together. And this was presented to the last meeting at the building committee, because I was tasked with coming up with a plan and how we're going to pay for the land that we just authorized the purchase for and the execution of the contract with High Tech. So what we'll do is I'll come back to you next month with a resolution authorizing us to use out of any bond proceeds that are issued in the future for those projects to allow these expenditures for the land and the engineering fees, architectural fees to be paid for out of bond proceeds. That's as a precaution, so that if we need to use bond proceeds to pay for them, we can. So let's talk about, you've got the letter from David Brown Associates, which is the same letter that was presented at the building committee on the 24th of April. Brad, if you could put that up, put up the second page of that, if you could, please. Thank you. Let's go to page 3. The last page. There we go. So let's talk about how we would finance the building. So you can do a referendum, which would you take it to the voters with your plan, and you would say, this is what we're planning to spend, and this is how much, and you would let the voters decide. Another way to do this, referendum obviously takes quite a bit more time, and you might not be able to meet the schedule we talked about at the building committee meeting. And there's a third way we'll talk about after we talk about this. So process and timeline. I heard the phrase, everything has a process, and this is one of them here that we really need to follow if we're going to do this. So tonight, what you would do is you would request staff to come up with a capital improvement plan. Whether it's 5 years or 10 years or however far you want to look out for that. And the reason you would do that is it would enable you to wrap things into that plan like the building project, any improvements, future improvements to the sewer, equipment needs, things like that. The advantage of doing that is, remember back in 2014, 2015, we came to the council with the capital improvement plan for roads only. So we identified a number of the roads that we wanted to fix, and we went with a process called reconstruction bonding for that. So what that authorized us to do with that plan was to say we're going to fix Manhattan Point or Anchor Point or whatever road we wanted to fix. We didn't have to go out and assess it. We could issue general obligation bonds to do that. And the plan gave us the authority to do that. So when you do that plan, the risk of doing that is, let's say you identify a project, and the project is, you identify it in your plan as $3 million, and you get the bids back, and the plan is $4 million. You've got a choice to make. You can make up the difference with cash, or you can amend your plan and go through that public hearing process again and bringing it back and having the hearings and reauthorizing your plan. The schedule I've laid out before you is very aggressive, to say the least. So we would authorize a plan tonight. June 10th would be really the earliest. That gives you, what, about 28 days, 22 days, or basically 2.5 to 3 weeks to come up with a plan that everyone agrees on, to put out to the public, to have a public hearing on that plan. Once that plan is out there, you would have that public hearing, the public could comment on it. If there are no comments received on it under this schedule, July 8th, you could authorize the sale of bonds contingent on no petition against that plan being received. July 11th, the petition period would expire, and you could probably get bonds issued under that plan as early as August 12th, which again is quite aggressive. So what could happen, give you worst case, let's say, we've already gone ahead with the land purchase, we've gone ahead with the design part of it, and it fails. So what you really have is a plan that's waiting at some point in the future to be funded. So you wouldn't have a new building where you could change your plan and you could say, I've got enough, I can generate enough cash from other sources to go ahead and do that. And that's the third source I talked about earlier. On the information I provided at that meeting back in April, we were looking at issuing somewhere in the neighborhood of $3.5 million of bonds once you figure in issuance costs. That would get your annual payments of principal and interest over 15 years roughly at $298,000, so we'll call it $300,000 a year would be the payments for about 15 years. And that's what we talked about at that meeting. So if that's the course you want to follow, this would be the schedule we would try to keep with, which puts a lot of work on Ted and Dave and pretty much every department head. We've already got a rough draft going out a few years, but the purpose of this would be to extend it further than that. So the other question I posed to the bond advisors was to say, okay, now that we understand the risk of this, what our risks could be on this schedule, what do we do if it fails?
What would cause it to fail? Where would the failure come?
Someone might not like it. We might not be able to, the public might not like it. We might not be able to agree on a plan, and we may not be able to meet this deadline. So for the sake of this argument, let's say we get the plan in place, and we're only talking how we're going to fund it. If we can't do this, our third option potentially would be to issue lease revenue bonds, similar to what we did when we built the Public Works facility and this facility we're sitting in right now, through the EDA. The downside of doing that would be there is more risk, the bonding costs are higher, and in today's market, I'm hearing there's about roughly a 2% or a little more increase in the interest rate from general obligation bonding. So keep that in the back of your mind while we're doing this. But again, any plan that you do put out there, if the project comes in more than what you've identified in your plan, we've got a decision to make. Do we want to amend the plan and go through that process, the hearing process again? Or do we want to just make up the difference from some other source? The last question I asked of him is saying, okay, so let's say we go ahead and we get this plan put together, everyone agrees on it, and we're ready to issue bonds. How would we tie any potential future sales tax to our plan, whether it's a sewer project or a building project or equipment purchases or whatever it is we've identified in that plan? We're not clear on the answer to that today. The legislative session ends in a week from tonight, it's scheduled to end. So we're looking into whether or not we can tie a future sales tax back to our capital improvement plan, so we have another way to generate dollars to pay for it. So for purposes of tonight, I still see value in having the council authorizing us to do that plan. And I think we can commit, I'm not going to speak for all staff right now, but we would do what we could to meet that schedule and keep everybody apprised on where we're at with that, so everybody knows what to expect. We still have to do the 5-year plan. You know, this would get it kicked off in a formal fashion. So what do you think?
I would like you to be as aggressive as you can, and one thing I want to say about it is if we could get this going by the middle of August and start the building process, we could have it closed in when weather hits, and that would save us a good percentage. I mean, it would save us some money.
Yep.
Rather than building it through the winter. So the sooner we can get it going, I mean, and there should be a conversation with High Tech. If we could get the new building enclosed by November and hopefully get moved into it and let them start on the fire hall in the middle of the winter, there's going to be a big savings between the two of them. It's inside, especially this one here for the fire hall, that's inside winter work.
Yeah. You know, I think everyone understands the timeline of the deadline, but I also want everyone to understand the risk that goes around this too.
Well,
Okay.
that's why we got to be aggressive and find out, you know, eliminate the risks, right? I mean, by doing it.
Yep, so if it's your intent to authorize the drafting of the CIP, the capital improvement plan, we can do that tonight. And then we can, after we have a staff meeting set up for later this week to talk about this and other things, you know, we can see what we can do, because I think everyone wants to keep the momentum up and the excitement up of making this a reality.
How many years would you go out on, would you suggest?
Right now, based on the rates, we're looking at 15.
Could you do your plan for 15?
That, yes.
Is that enough?
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty foggy to go any further.
I would
Probably
say
foggy
5.
after 5.
I rely on you for that answer.
Him.
Yeah. We get
Yeah.
forecasting, you know, especially with the weather, anything past 3 days is
Yeah.
tough. So we would need a motion to do this, is what I'm asking for, based on what we talked about today.
Okay, somebody want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion, we look at the process timeline that we're looking at right here for the CIP, and we proceed with that time schedule that you've got laid out.
I second it.
You want to go for 15 years?
Yes.
15 years.
All right.
As recommended. I mean, I'm not doing your motion for you, but, I mean,
Well, the 15 years, yes.
Yeah, but understand too, that, you know, we'll talk about this later this week. A lot of us have already started on this, especially with Public Works You know, this is looking out quite a ways. And, you know, that, we'll let you know if we run into problems with it.
Okay.
Meeting that.
So we've got a motion and a second, I believe. The only discussion I want to throw in there is that I'd like to keep it going as aggressively as we can, you know, try to get it all done. So all in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. But again, just be aware that, you know, there may be things we're not in control of with that too. So let's talk about number 3. Item 3 under my report is, you know, for the last, I think, when did we start with the clean team, Char? 2013, I believe. They're asking for a rate increase effective May 1st from $125, an increase of $125 a month to $500 a month for cleaning services. Just for the background on that, they started cleaning the maintenance building in 2014, and we've had really good results with them. I think Ted will attest to that.
What all do they clean?
For Public Works?
Well, do they clean here too?
Yes.
That's this letter.
So this is in regards to Public Works?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And that bill, remember, we split that 5347 with the county. So the county pays a little more half.
And this is of the 500 or whatever that number is, this is the total number?
Yep.
Yeah.
Our recommendation would be to accept the adjustment.
Any problems with them in the past?
No.
They've been with us, what, 5 years?
They're
Mhm.
bonded.
6?
They're bonded.
They're bonded and insured.
Then you're happy? Okay. I make a motion to.
I second it.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, item 4 is a letter from the Highway Department regarding right-of-way acquisition and the process that would be followed for County State Aid Highway 36 from County State Aid 3 on the north, about a mile north of, 7/10 of a mile north in the city of Cross Lake. It's the process that we would agree with the county to follow for right-of-way acquisition for that project. This is fairly standard. They're just confirming that process with us. So our recommendation would be to, yeah. And they want to pay us $600 for part of our cemetery property as part of that project.
They're just going to widen the road there and they're going to, yeah.
I so move.
Ted has something.
Ted has a question for us.
Oh, okay.
The clerk wanted me to go look at the staking they'd done to make sure it wasn't going to interfere with any of our current sites out there, and we are in the clear, so.
Okay, that was my question.
Okay, so we've got a motion?
So move, yes.
Got a second?
I'll second that.
We've got a second by Shrupp, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, the item 5 is a memo from the Personnel Committee. We're talking about daily meal reimbursements, also known as per diems, when people travel for training, conventions, or other events. The city currently reimburses employees the cost of meals while traveling on city business. The employee turns in the receipt, and the city reimburses the cost of the meal. In an effort to treat all employees equally, the Personnel Committee recommends that the city adopt a set rate for meal reimbursement as follows: breakfast 15, lunch 15, dinner 20. If a meal is included in the cost of a conference or a training, no extra meal reimbursement will be paid. The employee will be responsible for providing the entire registration and agenda before the payment is made. Employees can receive payment before or after travel. These rates coincide with the current IRS standards. So the reason this came about is when you're doing meals and entertainment reimbursements for people that are traveling, oftentimes, you know, we don't get the right receipts or the paperwork lags, or we get into debates on, well, why can I get the same as somebody else because somebody had a different value meal than I did? And it's an attempt to streamline the reimbursement process on our part and make sure everyone's treated the same with what they do when they're at these events. So the recommendation is to adopt this rather than actual meal reimbursements, what we're doing now. Actual amounts.
As a longtime Fed, I support this system, and this is actually under the M&IE for the federal rate currently. Trying to keep track of receipts is just a never-ending hassle.
So you support this?
I would support this.
Is that a motion?
Make a motion.
I'll second it. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Okay. Item 6, memo dated May 7th from Charlene Nelson, City Clerk, Group Transient Merchant Application. The memo on top reads, you can read it. Peggy Johnson of the Treasure Haven up north is requesting approval for a group transient merchant permit to arts and crafts vendors to sell merchandise at her business at 35170 County Road 3 on the following dates in 2019. The dates are listed: May 24th, 25th, 26th, 31st, June 1st, July 5th and 6th, August 2nd, 3rd, 30th, 31st, and September 6th and 7th. The fee of $50 has been paid and a background check is clear. Motion is required to approve the permit.
Is this a new one? So this will be the first time for it. I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second it.
Okay, little conversation in between. Shar, have you had any hesitation or anybody resistant to this for any reason?
No, I had the police
Heard.
chief go through it, make sure there was room for parking, and,
So you haven't heard any negative impacts of it?
no,
No.
this would be their first time operating, so.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Okay, I'm done unless council has questions for me. Thank you.
No, thanks, Mike. Commission.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'm just here to declare some equipment surplus. We have our Rescue 1 that's going to be replaced here in August, so I just need a motion to declare it surplus, the old one.
And you're
the
going to keep it
1994.
till August when you get the new one, right?
Yeah, well, it'll be here until the new one comes.
I'll make that motion.
I second it.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you. And then I have one more thing. Mr. Schrupp, can you clarify your statement on regarding holding off on the fire hall?
Around holding off?
Yeah.
It's never going to get done. It's just the first priority I thought was to get them going on the admin and the police.
Chip, we are all for you.
Well, I understand
If you
that, but I
wanna-
just want it on record because it's basically says that it's on hold.
I'd leave it up to somebody else
So-
to say. We're going to want them to start on it, but I know that you had some input on it, and we haven't really talked about that yet. So I don't know if
want
you
a
want to delay
clarification.
it 6 months. I don't know how long it takes them to do the
As
engineering.
soon as we can get the other staff out of here and get in here, that's when it's going to take place.
I wasn't trying to
Sooner
turn
than-
it off.
Okay.
I'm just slowing it down a little
All right.
bit. so.
Thank you.
So maybe when we get the capital improvement plan laid out a little more firm, it's very, like as I mentioned earlier, it's very expensive to issue bonds. We may want to consider that in our timing with this because it might be more efficient to issue one bond for both projects all at once.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Why don't we have it back on tentatively scheduled for the July meeting? So it gets discussed again? It doesn't just sit there and
Yep.
hang out?
Correct. Remember, we have 2 holidays in there too, so.
Okay. John?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have 2 items for action tonight. The first one is amending the ordinance to name a road. Anytime anytime there's a driveway that has more than 2 addresses on it, it needs to become a named road so that we can assign addresses on there. This one is here off of County Road 3, next to the daycare center and the nursery. There are actually 5 addresses on that end of that driveway right now, so that it needs to become a named road. The residents down there asked it to be named RBK Lane. We've verified with the county that that is an okay name to have, and we're here for a motion to amend the ordinance and add that to the list of road names in the city.
What does it stand for?
Yeah, is there any reason to inquire what it stands for?
I don't know what it stands for. And it's just
Probably his
initials
dad's
of
name.
somebody that was down there, I believe.
Koch's dad, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, and needs to be published, the summary of the ordinance in the newspaper.
Yep. So do we have a motion to approve that?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
The second item that I have is a final plat. You saw the preliminary plat back in August, I believe, or September, and this is off of Fawn Lake Road, County Road 120. Cynthia Holden and the American National Bank, who's the fee title holder on this right now, they're separating out and creating 10 new lots down along the County Road 120. The one item that you had asked for in the final plat was that they show the easement of the power line, which they have here, so that has been done on their part. So we're looking for a motion to accept the final plat and to accept the park dedication fees in lieu of any land for this. And they have paid those fees. It was, for the 10 new lots, is $15,000. So we're looking at a motion to.
I'll make a motion to accept it.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries, Shar.
That's all that I have. Thank you.
Thanks.
TJ?
Mayor, council, under my staff report, item number 1, you'll see new phone system. I'm requesting to reallocate money within the capital budget, both budgets, to purchase a new phone system for the Parks Department and the library. Currently, they're titled under the budget computer system or software. I would like to replace that with a new phone system. Right now, give you a little background. We only have one line that works in the front desk for the Parks Department. We used to have 2. We don't really know what happened to that. Our voicemail is not working, and we're constantly losing some of our calls. So this is pretty important for us to get a new system. And right now, the quote came back at $3,350 for 6 new phones.
I so move.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 2, natural gas line. At the last council meeting, I discussed my proposal to possibly in the future run a natural gas line instead of using propane. You'll see option number 1, install both services and meters, one to garden shed and one to the maintenance shed, will approximately be $9,000. And then option number 2, run a gas main to garden garage for $1,600, then contract it out to finish pulling the line to the maintenance shop for an additional $1,600. But as you notice, the city would be liable for that second stretch of line. So anything that happened in the future, if there was any issue with leakage from that natural gas, XL would come out and make sure everything's safe, but after that, we would be liable to make any maintenance adjustments or to fix that line.
There's no meters on the last one either, right? Is there a reason to have meters on them?
Well, you have to have meters, but it's an extra $35 or $70 together, so. I'm requesting personally to work into my budget, capital outlay budget, in the future, to go with the 9,000. I think that's a smarter option to make sure that we're not liable for any future damages to that line.
Who digs it in at the 1,600?
The initial 1,600, that would be XL. They're
No,
both XL.
Option 2.
Option 2, we would have to contract that out to pull that line.
TJ, you have to locate it also. I mean, having to locate it, you were responsible for locating that private line.
Ted, is that in an area that would be dug up for any reason?
Their underground power is there for both the buildings and for the garden area, their underground lighting. I don't remember where your camera system runs there.
I don't believe it runs over there.
I don't.
So
see any.
I'm just looking for a motion to select an option to go with so I can put it in my future budget.
I'd make a motion to do option 1.
I second that.
Okay, a little discussion. Why would we spend $6,000 more? Because in the event that we might dig it up at some time and get a gas leak.
Well, if corrosion in the ground and there's a leak, we'd still have to maintain it as well. It's not just because we're digging,
Corrosion?
well, over the 20 years, you never know what a line's going to do, if it's going to eventually start leaking.
Well, they're dug all over the place. If they do, we're all in trouble. I don't know.
Well, who would install it? Somebody that's done this
They
before?
dig gas lines every day, you know?
So Excel or another contractor?
It would be another contractor for Excel to do this.
Who was digging there the other day?
That's curling power.
What's your,
I just wanted to add, this is what my son does for RV Communication. He reinstalls gas lines, he's doing it all over the state. That gas line at any time can go bad, and that's his job to reinstall them. So if you so choose that piece and it goes bad, then it's at our cost and our liability, so.
all right, we could do it 3 times for that cost, but I'm going to vote no on it, but you guys go ahead.
I think for the hassle factor and reliability factor, one time, and he's going to take out of a budget next year, so.
Do we have a motion on there?
I
Motion to
and
do
I-
option 1 because of the
You
liability.
did. Do we have
I
a second?
seconded it. I did.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries.
Moving on to item number 3, weight room weight plates. I'm requesting to mark those weight plates as surplus. Since we bought the new equipment in the weight room, we no longer have use for these other weight plates, so I'd like to get rid of them.
So move.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second it?
Second, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Thanks. Moving on to notable updates, the library book sale last weekend, we generated $345. It's still on the low end. We see that number start to skyrocket as more and more people start coming into town. Special thanks again, like every month, thank you to the volunteers. If it weren't for them, we would not be having these book sales. Moving on to the day of curing. This past Wednesday, the Pequot Lakes kids from the high school came over. 12 kids helped rake some wood chips around the trees, lay some black dirt, put down some seed, and help pick up some sticks in the dog park. So again, thank you for those volunteers to come out and help us out. Moving on to picnic pavilion bathrooms. In the past, we have not opened up the bathrooms to the general public. They've been only open if you rent out of the pavilion. And we used to put porta potties around the park, which I believe it looks a little tacky. We have restrooms readily available. I purchased smart locks, motion lights, kind of the same thing I did with the warming house. I will have the ability to open and close these doors of the pavilion on my phone, so no staff has to go out there and we don't have to worry if it's open all night or closed during the day. So I'm going to keep those open during the hours of operation and then close it when we're closed. So just a little update.
Yep.
And then lastly, dog park. Again, at the last council meeting, I told you I would go speak to some neighbors and listen to their concerns. After talking to one of the spokespersons of the neighborhood, they made a special request that we follow through with planting trees. After reviewing some minutes of the past council meetings, there was never a requirement to plant 30 trees. It was just something I heard. So I'm sorry I misinformed everyone, but we do plan to plant trees. I plan on going over to the east side of our property. We have very thick pine trees over there that we like to weed out, and they were planted for a purpose like this. So we're going to plant the trees next week. The pole is going up for the security camera, so everything should be wrapped up here in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned. If you don't have any more questions, that's all I got.
Thank you.
Nope.
Thanks.
Thanks, TJ.
Okay, Ted, good evening. We have 2 items for you tonight. The first one is a parking and pedestrian route study. I'm going to ask Dave Reese to come forward and at this time, please.
Evening, Council. This agenda item is a result of a meeting that we had, city staff, county staff, and some representatives of the National Loon Center. And it's a meeting that the discussion centered around traffic with the development around the downtown commercial district. This district is basically what we've outlined, and it was set apart in past planning and zoning for specific zoning for high-density development in this area. And it mainly encompasses the properties bounded by Highway 3, Highway 66, Swan Drive, and one tier of property north of Swan Drive, which would include the hotel and school. With the amount of development that's occurring within the downtown commercial area, the concerns about traffic accesses onto the county highway system, the number of pedestrians and crossing points of county highways is a real concern. And that was kind of the point of discussion. How much of an impact will there be from ultimate development in this area, and looking at traffic and pedestrians, and looking at the types of development that have been proposed. You've gotten, most recently, senior development housing. You've got a proposal for 60-unit apartment building. And then the National Loon Center, probably the largest 3 that have come forth most recently. The origins of this downtown commercial district was to create an area of pedestrian movement, shopping, with a lot of shared amenities. Infrastructure was put in place during the concept phase of this downtown area that dealt with the main local streets, the drainage, stormwater treatment, and what all that work did was allow higher density development, higher impervious coverage that would be treated through a common treatment system, shared parking throughout the district that would allow people to park where they wanted to, and then walk around through the area to area businesses and parks. So having said all that, there was concern about the intersection with Highway 3 and 66, and what kind of traffic is being generated by these development proposals. What we really concluded at the end of our conversation, based on the operations plan of the National Loon Center and the rest of the area development there, is that the traffic component at that intersection and along some of the other corridor areas is really not the concern. It's mostly parking and pedestrian that are the concern, and the crossing points and so forth. So what we concluded was that another traffic impact study is really not the need at this point. What is really needed is an inventory of what parking areas we already have, what walkways and trail systems and crossings of county highway systems and local roads we already have, and what we need to do to complete them where there's gaps, what we need to do to add additional improvements so that it provides safe pedestrian access throughout this area and adequate parking. So from origin to destination, parking to places of interest, what we have proposed is a study to the City Council. The City Council agreed to be the lead on the initial idea that traffic impact was the concern. It's evolved into a parking and pedestrian study. The three partners in this initially looking at contributing to the study is the city, the county, the National Loon Center. And we've got representatives of both groups here tonight. I think everyone's committed to doing this study, each having benefits coming from it and moving forward. But what we really wanted to do was kind of give you the background behind how did we get here and what we see moving forward, and defining the study area to include the Army Corps campground area where a lot of pedestrian traffic is generated, has been generated for years, in crossing Highway 66, and the rest of the downtown commercial area, and bringing all that together into more of a comprehensive plan. So, Leah, would you like to?
I was just, can you tell me how long ago that court thing was established? Was it 15 or?
Sure. The downtown commercial area was put together back when Swan Drive was actually conceived of. There was a general implementation plan that was put together that laid out the basic comp plan, if you will, for the downtown commercial area. And that was back in close to 2002, 2003, when that was done. So it's been around quite a while. Every time someone in the downtown commercial area looks at developing a piece of that, the next logical step is to put together a specific implementation plan. The concept might be zero lot lines. You see that down there around the town square with a parking component. And that's brought forth to the city for approval. As a whole, you know, it all has to conform to that original general implementation plan, the comp plan for the area. So.
Yeah. Hi, Leah Hagerston, resident and National Loon Center. Tim Bray is here too, and he helped us work with this, and so did the grant that we got for the Loon Center from the National Park Service. But I just wanted to say that we are open to anybody else that wants to participate financially in the study. But we've stepped up, and the county stepped up, and you guys did. So thank you, Mike, for coordinating. Also, we have included the Chamber of Commerce and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to help us conduct preliminary work, not financial, just intelligence, and also to conduct the final, be part of the final work session. And we will also do public hearings when we're done with all of this, to be concluded at the end of the summer, August 30th.
Hi,
Mayor and council members, thank you for having me. I just wanted to reiterate a couple points that I spoke with Dave about. Was it today or yesterday? Just with regard to this agreement. I'm not sure if you're being asked to act on it tonight. Maybe. Yeah. They are. Okay. So I just wanted to just go over my concerns a little bit more than Dave touched on. The way they set it up is right. My concerns for the traffic study have become diminished because of how the parking is going to be set up. There'll be no added parking spots to the Loon Center, and the focus is really on pedestrian safety and parking. But this is, the original traffic study was set up 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 between the city, the Loon Center, and the county, and that just kind of found its way in here. And I'm thinking it should be a little bit different if we're focusing on pedestrians. There are a component of, the county road is a player in that, but I also think there are other players that should be sharing in the cost. And I think the Corps of Engineers is one of them, and I know that it might be very difficult to get them on board, but I think we should be asking. I think I would be more in favor of a 25% between the four of us. I'm a little less connected to the pedestrians and where the parking lots are located in terms of the county's interest, and so I think it should be diminished from that 1/3, 1/3. I also think that there is a potential for this study to creep. When we talk about pedestrians and parking in this city, it is not just contained to that area. And you'll be asked by others to come on board about pedestrian use in their area. So I want to cap the county's participation so it doesn't include a creep to other parts of the city. So I thought we were maybe going to talk a little bit more about that, and this was not going to be necessarily approved tonight. That's why I didn't say anything at first. But I also want to just, and maybe this is an offline discussion with Leah and also Holly Larson from the National Park Service. My understanding is that they were also given a grant to the city of Cross Lake to look at pedestrian movements. And I just want to make sure that we're not doubling up the effort, and maybe Leah can speak to that.
It would just be that she would help us find monies to either pay for in advance or pay for after the fact, but we would pay up front.
Okay, my understanding was when we spoke was that the National Park Service could actually do some of that work, this pedestrian look, wayfinding, I know was one of the things that she was looking at. So I just wanted to make sure as we go forward that we're not doubling effort, particularly when we're contributing funds. And so that's I just want to bring that to your attention, to try to get another partner, because the Corps of Engineers and their patrons are a big component of the pedestrian usage in this area and are as connected.
Has anybody approached the Corps and asked them if they wanted to contribute?
They're not contributing to this. They don't have the funds. In fact, their budget's being cut right now federally.
So you're saying 25%, which would increase ours without the fourth person.
I'd like to see that.
Pardon?
I wouldn't mind seeing that. So, well, the Corps of Engineers is more tied to the pedestrian movements and where you're parking.
Well, I get it, but I mean,
than the county is, so I'm just.
They've got a pretty good history of saying no, and I think they mean it when they say it.
Right. I don't think that's why we shouldn't ask.
Well, we did ask, they said no. I asked.
Should the city and county ask? Think there would be added pressure, let me put it that way. I realize I have no problem with that, Leah, I understand, but would there be added pressure, do you feel? You know it better than I do.
I don't know if pressure is the right word, just are they a partner?
Yeah.
I'm a little skeptical about how much the pedestrian movements are the county's responsibility, particularly if you look in the study area, there's some destinations that are the townhomes way away from County Road 3 and trying to get to the campground. So we're in. I mean, we want to contribute, but I just want to make sure that that's appropriate, and we're asking all the folks that should be a player.
So are those purple lines, are those indicating possible crosswalks or something? I guess I didn't, or is it just highlighting areas?
They're pointing to facility.
There's no intention to mark crosswalks on this. It's just
Okay.
to show the study
Identifying
area,
and arrowing to, yeah.
the boundary.
The furthest reach is the traffic to the golf course, the Crosswoods Golf Course.
Yep.
And so, one of the options that we've talked about to get more participants into helping to pay for this study is National Park Service and talking to Holly. And I did place a call with her today, but did not receive a call back. I think she's working part-time.
Yeah. We did a year ago, too. We got a commitment from Eric, to the Chief of Police, and Todd Licio to look at safe routes as well. But, and Eric, I think we ran out of time, and now we've run out of time again. And then it's a whole nother year to apply to MnDOT after, if you get safe routes. And I didn't really think that that was a good funding source anyway, because we only had like 2 kids that walked to school.
So the schedule is, this is going to get wrapped up the end of August, right? What's going to happen with the potential Loon Center and apartment building? Is it going to be on hold until then, until the study's done? No?
The Loon Center's not starting construction this year, so if that's what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, I don't know what's going on with it.
I think, well, the Loon Center doesn't start construction this next year yet. But, and I think the apartment and the senior living were not included in the cost for this because their accesses are not on the county road anymore? Was that the discussion?
Hopefully, I don't think that action's been taken by the planning and zoning yet.
There's been discussion of access for the apartment building not occurring on Highway 3. And I think that was part of the justification for not going strictly to a traffic impact study, but looking at more the pedestrian and parking focus, so, at least from the county standpoint.
Certainly, that's certainly helpful. I don't know that we're here to talk about that tonight, but I guess just one final thing is, if you're going to act on this tonight, I guess the county actually is a signatory on it too, and I guess I'm not ready to recommend to our board that we agree quite yet to this until we've exhausted looking at our partners, or our share is capped to make sure that this doesn't creep into other areas and we're on the hook for wherever it goes.
But would you be 30% of what we got going on, 6,000? Would you commit to that today? A third of it instead of 25%?
Reluctantly.
Yeah, okay. I get it.
To capped at 6,000.
Is this not to exceed? This is a not to exceed contract.
And it's for parking and pedestrian.
Just from my experience, when you're engaging the community, and I think that's an important part of this study, is finding out from the residents who are interested in where those parked cars go, that when you get into those public meetings and those public things, sometimes you add meetings, or you notice that there needs to be a more public discussion. I think there's an assumption of one meeting here, and that's where we can really start to add more money, and I just want to be really careful about the loose connection to the county from some of these pedestrian moves, it creeping into a $40,000 study that we're on the hook for.
Yeah.
This is a not to exceed budget or contract amount. This is a cap amount, so.
I've seen those get overrun too, so.
And I think the important thing too in that regard is to establish what we have here is the study area. These are studies can creep. We could go all the way up Highway 66, out Highway 3 and southward. This is a defined area where we're expecting high-intensity pedestrian crossings of county highways and an area of walking and commerce. So that's the area that we're focusing on, where the high-density development is occurring.
Tim, how is the county going to be if we need like a flashing light, or, we've talked about this over the years too, pedestrian crossings, maybe more of them, or some kind of lights or anything. What's the county's position on that?
I think we're open to understanding what the demand is, and
In the past, you've been hesitant to do anything.
I have
Is
been
that correct?
hesitant, particularly in the area of the campground. There's plenty of these out there where they exist and people don't use them anyway. I'm really skeptical that if we really beef up the crosswalks or bump outs or some of those higher-end pedestrian movements on Swan Drive and then also at 66 and 3, they're just still going to walk right across to Holiday. You're going to invest all that money.
Yeah, right.
And be
But if you live here in town and you drive through town in the summer, you can see some close calls by pedestrians who are in the crosswalk and
That's
they're
true.
not seen. So, I mean, any of us who live here have seen that. So whatever might slow them down, or, that's
I'm
where some
willing
of us
to-
kind
I'm
of think
hoping
lights
that's what
might
the
help
study-
or something, but whatever.
I'm hoping that's what the study will recommend is, what are the volumes, where are they coming from, where do we need to spend the most money and time on getting pedestrians safely across County Road 66?
One more question. How much hands-on does the county have in the study?
I think it sounds like it'll be a third-party engineering firm and will be, have a seat at the table.
Okay, taking in information. Yeah.
As far as, there'll be some data that will be useful from all the parties that we've named in this proposal. The data collection will be handled by our firm.
Yeah, I guess I don't need to know how you do it, but. Okay, so you're looking for a motion for us to be in for $6,000 or 30% of the 18? How do you guys, where you at?
I think it's got to be done. City's growing.
I mean, I agree with you. I, again, don't want to see it run away either. Ted, what do you got?
I guess I was one of the early starters of some of this stuff. I've seen the people, the near misses. I see we have a lot of, everybody from business to local people that have concern. Somehow we got to come up with the right answers, and I think this is one of the tools that will give us in the right direction. I'm behind going forward with it. Maybe we got to take a little more out of the city coffers because the county doesn't, quite want to participate as much, but
Don't let them off that easy.
don't let them out that easy, okay. I work with these guys every day, and they've been very good to work with, so. I'm for it.
I know Dave Reese is going to come back with you need to buy a parking lot here. I mean, it's probably going to come back with a recommendation that we're going to have to get in the loop on something,
Taxi.
And that's all part of that 15-year capital plan.
right?
I
Yep.
mean, I looked at a crystal ball and I said, a sidewalk on the other side of 66. I said, a parking lot here. I guessed because I have no idea, no
You have
direction.
nothing right
This
now.
is,
Yeah.
hopefully we'll get some of
Yeah.
those things ironed out.
So did you make a motion?
I did not, no, go ahead.
I'll make a motion that the city's in for 6,000.
So you're capping it. Our amount we're in, you said 6,000, so no creeping.
Well, Tim can't commit to anything, can you?
I can commit. Yeah, I can commit for 6,000 as well. I have approval to commit to that.
I'll commit to a cap of 6,000. I
Okay, we're there.
just want to be on record, I think that the Corps should be a partner, they're a generator. of this traffic as much as, and they're on the hook as much as the county is. But I want to see this go forward. It's needed so we can safely get people around this town to this new attraction, so.
I totally agree with you. I think it's just real easy for the Corps to say no.
I'll agree to the, I'll second it with the 6,000 cap.
Okay, we got a second with the 6,000 cap. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Council.
Yep. Thank you, Ted.
In your additions, we have a change order and a retainage reduction from Bolton and Mink. I'm going to ask Mr. John to come forward.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. As you recall, last time I was here, we reviewed proposed change order. The direction from the council was to go back and look at a couple of different options on how to resolve the issue that was at hand. So the letter presented has some options for that, and I have broken apart the change order items into a couple different change orders to make it a little more clarified. Change order number 1 is secondary from the generator issue. The VFDs on the existing oxidation ditches are currently operating, but the capacitors are bad, or essentially the battery backup, so every time the power transfers, staff has to go reset all the settings within those, the little logic controllers. So it really takes away all the benefit of having an automatic transfer switch for the generator, because if it happens at 3 in the morning, staff's got to go back out there and reset the VFDs.
In the original design, when we were looking at the plant, these pieces of equipment were working flawlessly. We weren't having any issues with them. In this process of the construction, we started having problems with their fans and their capacitors. And we learned that they are obsolete. There is no more parts. They happened to find in a warehouse 4 in stock new motors from somebody they bought off eBay, and our new fans, and otherwise they would be down and we would have had to replace them anyway. But that's one of the most integral parts of the plant that runs the oxidation ditch and the VFD controls that add the oxygen to the tank. So it's pretty critical that we get those pieces changed. I apologize I didn't catch it for the putting in the project, but it still has to be done, so.
I think Ted had a great description. The only follow-up I'd have is, part of the reason we'd recommend running through the contract is that for contractually, for warranty reasons, we're using the same integrator and same electrician, which makes life easier in the future for Ted if there's any warranty issues. And in discussions with Mike, there's a little bit more of a streamlined financing for that. It's the same cost whether you would break it out and run it on our maintenance budget, or if you run it under this project. But I think there's a financing ease for Mike on that end. The other portion on change order number 1 is there currently still is an underrun on the contract. So change order number 1, the proposed increase or cost for the VFDs of $13,451 would be offset by the current underrun, which is over $16,000. So technically, the project would still be under bid amount by $3,194 with the VFD changes. Any questions from council on the first item?
No.
If not, I'll keep moving, and we can maybe come back and regroup after we've reviewed all the items. The second item is labeled now change order number 2. That does regard the transfer switch and the challenges we've been working with on that. And just a real quick background is most of the plant's electrical system is original to the original construction. The majority of the motors, the step-down transformers, wiring, much of the control center is original to the previous project. That was in good working condition yet, so we didn't necessarily just arbitrarily place it for no reason. The old generator that did run the plant only ran one train of critical motors. It did not run all the auxiliary components. So some of the items we're looking at were never under emergency power historically, and it only ran half the treatment process train, I'll say it's the right half of it versus, and didn't run the left half of that. Bit of an anomaly in how that was set up, which nonetheless, this project is taking care of it, so it's going to run both halves of the treatment process, because Ted doesn't have the option of just arbitrarily shutting down half of that if there would be a power outage. So change order number 2 is a new transfer switch, similar to what we discussed last month, or 2 months ago, which council wanted to hold on. Again, the new transfer switch with a time delay, that would would make sure the transient voltage impacts are gone before it switches back, so we wouldn't have the voltage spikes. It does not necessarily replace the components that are causing the transient voltage spikes. So I'm going to jump maybe quickly to change order 2A, which is, I think what the council direction was last time, is look for what are the causes of the voltage spike and try to replace the items that are causing that versus the transfer switch. We know when all the testing was done, Eaton came in, they're one of the more sophisticated groups in the state, and did some testing. There are 2 75 kVA transformers, which are step-down transformers essentially, so they're just creating the low voltage power for lights, fans, and other 120 volt type things in the plant. Those are significantly oversized. Some loads have been taken off. We're not sure why one of those was ever installed that large in the first place, but nonetheless, they're there. They were working, but they are causing, based on the testing that's been done, they are causing the bulk of the voltage spike. We can remove those. We would recommend actually taking out both of those and replacing them with 1 transformer versus 2. It's relatively light loads on that. Instead of 150 volt kVA total of transformer, we could be down around a 30 kVA transformer, so it'd be significantly smaller than what's there right now. The risk reward on this is the cost is significantly less than what the new transfer switch is. This will significantly reduce the problem, and it may well be enough to resolve the problem 100%. The risk is that there could be another small underlying component in there that we can't pick up, because we know these are the major ones that cause that spike. There could be another component in that same network that might be causing a small portion of that spike that we can't segregate yet until we replace these. So there's a chance that if we do this, that we're going to be coming back with another $5,000 or $10,000 change to pick up one of those items. This is not the risk is not that we're going to change these, find out it's the wrong change. We just wasted this money. These will make a difference. It is replacing components that will benefit the plant. So it's not throwing good money after bad. It would be a matter. The risk is we can't guarantee beyond certainty that this will be the 100% solution with no additional work.
So on change order number 2, can you give us that full guarantee?
Yes. The change order number 2, which is for the price, the higher price, $59,111, that is the one that is guaranteed.
Guarantee it, John?
Yes. So the change order 2A, which essentially is 2, just I'm keeping them separate. Right now, we're recommending, if the council wants to consider that, doing that on a time and material basis with contractor. This is a lower voltage. It's relatively small wires and conduit, but the routes are a little bit unknown, so we're talking just some differences in lengths of wire and conduit. Holden Electric has done a number of things in time and material and has generally been favorable for the city on that end. It takes away some of their risk and could well come in below what their number is, but we're unsure. So we're looking at, for change order 2A, a total of $29,900 estimated on a time and material basis as the higher end. Holden gave a range of $5,000 from their low end to their high end, so it could, technically, if we looked at their range, it would be $24,000 up, or $25,000 to $29,000 would be the range that was estimated.
What's your recall of this last time? What's your recall of this last time?
Oh, from the
Why
last
did
meeting?
we kick it out? What's changed?
Well,
Ted,
I
what's
don't know.
changed?
Is this, now the transfer switch, we already paid for one already?
Yes.
So now
And
we're
that-
paying, they can't take this one back and put a time delay in it?
No, part of the, we've looked at a number of different things. There's a UL labeling that has to happen on these control panels, and once you make any modifications, nobody's going to certify it as UL, and your electrical inspector won't approve it then. That's the problem that we've run into.
We asked and they wouldn't
So you
allow us.
can't get it independent to come out and look at it?
No. Well, we had independent.
Yeah, but
We
can't,
had-
come again though.
Well, it's another $5,000, $6,000. Where do you want to stop the bleed?
I don't know.
We've
I
already
just-
spent $5,000.
I just want to know what you think is going to work the
Well,
best.
we brought in the electrical engineer and Sheldon Sorensen, and we brought in the testing company in, two of the very best in the industry. And they did all their testing and they come down to these transformers. But they cannot say guaranteed that that's gonna be the answer. They will not. They said if we switch the switchgear where they can take and program it to take in, so that it delays the start. And I mean, you know, we're thinking, or that kind of start. It's just a matter of milliseconds, but, that's the only way they'll guarantee it, is that switchgear.
So for 29,000, we could take a chance and save some money, or 59, we're guaranteed that we're done with it.
That's what they've spoke to us about.
I think that's well summarized. What I understand is, you know, the risk on the 29,000, what's left out there would be smaller items, but until we actually get to that point, it's hard to
Do you
quantify.
know what those smaller items are?
Not yet.
Can we give you, we'll give you 34,000 and put all the small stuff in and get her done?
No, we, at that point, unfortunately, at that point, we'd be guessing what the last couple items are, and we'd be potentially replacing items that are in good shape. We'd be more prudent to spend the 29,000, determine, because it may take care of the problem. It may take care of 100% of the problem. There's enough unknown, we just can't get, nobody's gonna give you the guarantee on the 29,000.
Kind of like burying a gas line. Do you want to spend 3 grand or 9 grand?
So who's guaranteeing the 59,000? You guys?
Us and the contractor, yes. That's been a group effort to develop that proposal. It's a group effort on change order 2A also, which is the step-down transformers. So again, one takes care of the delayed stop, makes the voltage spike dissipate and it's gone. When you restart, the other one's trying to take care of the items that are causing that voltage spike. Two different ways to approach it.
So they're older transformers that we have in there now?
Original.
And how many years have they been in there?
Original,
So they've
18
been
years.
18 years, and they do fail.
Yep.
Eventually, yep.
There's been a lightning strike,
Yeah.
last summer, so there's been a number of different items in the plant that Ted was working direct outside of the contract with Holden Electric on, and Ted could probably tell you more than I can what he's had to replace, but there has been some damage from the lightning strike also.
If the council remembers, we've already replaced the switchgear in the main shop, the joint maintenance facility. That was fried. The telephone, a good part of electricity that was down at the shop was fried. And the way electrician says is, it's not if it's gonna fail, it's when it's gonna fail.
So what do you think we should do, Ted?
My idea is to go with the switchgear and be done with it. Stop chasing after it, put the $59,000 switchgear in and be done with it.
Okay, that's Ted's opinion.
And it's still, realize it's still 3 to 3.5 months before this will be installed. That's how much lead time out there.
That's probably the longest lead time item.
But that's also down from, what was it, 2 months ago, 100 and,
Well, 75, we're down to 59.
okay.
Well, we have, and I apologize, 2 months ago, we had the VFDs for the oxidation ditch. We had 2 components rolled together as one, so that's why there's a difference in price.
So that is.
It's the same price as was there, it's just we broke 2 parts out into 2 separate line items. I
Okay.
apologize if last month that might have been a little confusing on that end.
Get it fixed.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
I'll second it, along with sell the old switchgear. Put it on eBay or something.
Option
Motion,
number 2?
no, number one, I believe, is what you said.
Yes, I said number one. 59, 2.
Thank you.
We have
Yeah,
2 and
Oh,
2A.
not 2A, yeah.
Thank you.
Option 2.
Thank you.
That's right.
Thank you, Shar.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Get her done.
Change order proposal number 1, is there, before we jump to pay request, which would be the VFDs, and just essentially restitution with the unused allowance, which actually is the deduct of $3,194. If you don't approve the VFDs and do those by an alternate method, then technically change order number 1 would become a deduct of $16,000, because that's the city's money that doesn't go to the contractor if you don't use it, so.
So I'm getting confused. Which one should we do there?
Just do it.
There isn't a choice.
You can
on
fund it
item
through the
one.
contract, or you can fund it
I make a
separately.
motion, we approve change order number 1.
I second it.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Is that, we can use that 3194 to offset the 59?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So actually, the change order 2 that is
Thank you.
proposed in your packet has that offset already in the adjusted prices. So the final contract price there is based with that adjustment already included, as we number those sequentially. The last item in the letter is a request for retainage reduction from Eagle Construction. The project was substantially complete August 31st, 2018. Cities had beneficial use of it since that point. We, till we were able to get the group out, Eaton and all the others, to verify that the transfer switch issues weren't part of their construction and weren't part of Holden's work. We did not bring any retainage reduction, held their feet to the fire, and they have stepped up and attended, sent staff out there to review, and whenever we had people there. At this point, they're requesting there's a retainage reduction. They're substantially complete. Their punch list has been completed, so there's no punch list items remaining. So all their work is complete at this point. So the proposal is for pay request number 14 would be payment of $106,511.55 to Eagle Construction for a reduction of retainage, which would still leave $20,769 remaining to be paid in the contract before any change orders. Then with change orders, that number actually will increase, but there'd be, prior to your approval of change orders, there would be $20,700 remaining to be paid, essentially retainage for the contract. Remaining items typically is just this point, seeding and grading. Seeding in the next couple weeks, we'll know the status of that. Once that's up and resolved, their punch list is complete, and except for the electrical change order, they are fully compliant with the contract. They have a maintenance warranty for any other maintenance items that do happen to pop up, but it's not legal to hold retainage for the maintenance period, for the warranty period, just for the case that something might pop up. So our recommendation would be to approve pay request number 14 with the reduction of retainage with payment of $106,000, $511. Any questions from council?
Does that seem good, Mike? That's good. Make a motion, John.
I so move.
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, council. Can I just give you one little piece of news?
Sure.
The yard waste recycling was open last Friday and Saturday. No incidents, everything's going smooth. Cameras are working fine. So we'll keep going that way until we hear differently.
You got somebody sitting down there, or you just got it
No,
open?
my staff is just, we're opening in the morning, and my staff is going, closing it in the evening. It's from 10 in the morning till 6 in the evening on Fridays and Saturdays.
Got your signs all up?
Signs are all up. Come on down, take a look at it, tell me if I need to improve anything, but So far, it's going well.
$10,000 fine if you break the rules.
I didn't put that one
Ted,
down there.
did Shar approve all those signs?
She has actually looked at most of them. There's only a couple that isn't. What's that? No, that's still, yes. But I actually came underneath the money you allotted me, so.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, we got public forum. No action will be taken on any of the issues raised. If appropriate, the issues will be placed on the agenda for a future council meeting. Speaker must state their name and address. Each speaker is given 3 minutes. Anybody want to come up? Good. Okay, city attorney report. It's almost 10 o'clock.
That it is.
This, hard to see in the map, but this parcel's in green, and this is their house, and that's their dock. And there's a plat where this area that's the gap between the parcels right there is a public access. This area out here is as well. There will be probably an application to vacate this area, but those take several months to get to you, and you might say no. So the request tonight is, the dock has been put in that location for years, is my understanding. Whenever we have private property in a public area, we like to have a limited use agreement. It's the same form we've done in other lake access deals in the past. So looking for a motion to approve that. It might be a short-term fix because a vacation might happen and would make this moot, but we don't know.
And
if
the
it
property
would.
lines are just carried down.
Then he would own it, but that may never happen, or at least it's not going to happen for this swimming season.
I make a motion we approve. I'll do that one.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, what else is left?
Yep.
Old business, new business. Somebody make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.